So if you can come along and take your seats. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for making it here. I wish I could tell you this is the new Center for Automotive Research, but it's not. We're trying to figure out how we can get a conference room with 3 walls of windows. It's kind of a nice place to be. But we're grateful to have been invited to do the meeting here, and you'll hear a little bit from Colleen Gilger in a moment. But what I would like to do is to go through a quick introduction. I'm going to start from the left wing, and just a quick word, who you are and your affiliation.
Hi, Gary Horvat. I'm on the board of directors of a company called Nexion.
Hello, everyone. My name is Derek Davis from Honda, responsible for the talent pipeline here at Ohio State.
Hi, my name is Greg Jancourt. I'm a researcher at the Center for Automotive Research.
Chad Allison, Caterpillar Chief Engineer in Strategy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julio. I'm affiliated with the Center of Automotive Research.
Oh, sorry. David Emmerling. I am working for CAR at as an industry outreach guy.
Good morning, Nick Hagemeyer, Managing Director of Infrastructure and Technology for Drive Ohio.
Hi, I'm Alan Sheldon, Chief Engineer with Honda at the Honda Research Institute.
Hello, Dwayne Detweiler, also with Honda.
Hi, I'm Bill Hawley. I'm Vice President of Product Management for Wabtec Corporation.
Hi, I'm Vivek Maudgal with DSpace. I'm part of the corporate strategy team.
Prabjot Nanwa, part of Advanced Engineering Team, General Motors.
Eric Gatchling from Borg Warner.
Pete Olin, Borg Warner Advanced Engineering.
I'm Jeff Empel, CTO for Schaeffler in the Americas.
Hi, I'm Mark Schwabero. I'm a retired chairman and CEO of Brunswick Corporation.
Hello, good morning. My name is André Kulzer from University of Stuttgart, professor holding the chair for automotive powertrain systems.
Hi, I am Jim Jordan. I'm with the company SIS. It's new, and it's Siemens Products.
Jay Dice, I lead 4C Power's North America activity.
Hi, I'm Brianna Bedaines. I'm the Managing Director of Communications and Policy for Drive Ohio.
Good morning, I'm Brian Roos. I'm a Senior Manager for Advanced Engineering at Dana Incorporated.
Good morning, everyone. Michael Peminger from Argonne. I work on connected automated vehicles.
Gary Parker, Socken Technologies, Director of Strategic Initiatives.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michele Giuliani, Associate Research at Center for Automotive Research. Welcome.
David Cook, Senior Associate Director at CAR. We go that way.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Sitz. I'm an industry consultant for the Corporate and Foundation Engagement Office here at Ohio State.
I'm Gretchen Brandt, and I am the Corporate and Foundation Engagement Liaison for College of Engineering.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Manfredi Villani. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Mechanical Aerospace Engineering at Ohio State University. And of course, I work at CAR.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Niyati Thamaskar. I'm Director of Engineering Controls for Cummins.
Morning, everyone. I work at Cummins as well. I'm Jeffrey Divakar. I lead strategy, innovation, and partnerships for its R&D division.
Good morning. I'm Antonio Ramirez. I'm a professor of the Welding Engineering program, also director of the Magic Center, and also work with CAR.
Hello, I'm Michael Yohani. I'm leading the North American group of Venturi Space here in Columbus.
Morning, Mark Dilsaver, City of Dublin, Transportation Program Manager.
Suzanne Straight, Director of Research Development at OSU.
Good morning, I'm Derek Beer from Ford Racing.
I'm Jeff Christos. I'm a researcher at CAR.
Good morning, Wesley Oliver, Director of Vehicle Engineering. What are we? Central Ohio Transit Authority, COTA.
Hi, Chris York with Cummins Vehicle Cybersecurity.
Good morning, Eric Peppel, Senior Manager for Engineering for Crown Equipment,
focused on automated forklift development.
Hi, everyone. Michelle Fowler, Director of Applied Research at Transportation Research Center.
Good morning, Jen Dunn, Director of External Affairs at Transportation Research Center.
Good morning, Rashid Farahati from Scheffler, North America. I'm VP of the Competence Center.
Thank you very much, everyone. So we'll, again, Colleen, thank you for hosting us here. And I think you'll discover in the next few minutes a little bit more about where you are.
Great. Good morning. I'm Colleen Gilger. I am the Director of Economic Development here at the university. I work in the Enterprise for Research, Innovation, and Knowledge. I think some of you might have met John Horak yesterday. He is our boss. So we, Eric, as we like to call ourselves, we're not a he or a who, we're a what. We operate this building and the building next door. We are sitting in our innovation district for the university, which is all of West Campus. And we control these two buildings. We'll be building a third that I'll talk about. And this is really the catalyst for our innovation district as we partner with other developers for the remaining acreage. So welcome to our Energy Advancement and Innovation Center. We're terrible at naming buildings. It's a mouthful. We call it the EAIC for short. There we go. A couple details about the building, because I swore I was only going to take 7 minutes this morning. This is the main corner of our innovation district. This is the gateway. So everything to the west, south, this whole area around this building is our innovation district. We opened a couple years ago. As you could see walking up, 5 stories, 64,000 square feet. It was an excellent public-private partnership that we did with our Ohio State energy partners. And you can see across the street here in this photo and out these windows. Maybe when we open the blinds a little later today, you can see we also have our agricultural facilities and laboratories just to the north here. The thing that people want to talk about the most is the solar array up top on the roof. So we have 704 photovoltaic panels. It's big. We were an anomaly when we were building this building. The Columbus Division of Fire wasn't really sure how to allow us to have the solar panels hanging off the sides of the roof. You can see that they actually do hang off the sides. So how they were able to get fire trucks around this and all the fire lanes. What's really interesting is under the grass out here, we've had to make it so that fire trucks can be stabilized on the grass out there, because we actually had to make that a fire lane. So it was accessible on all 4 sides. And so this building does have a microgrid where we are allowing the solar panels to power some of the research happening on some of the floors here. Here are some of the tenants in the building. It's not just Ohio State, although you see the last bullet there, our tech commercialization office they're housed in this building, but it is open to third parties, which is something that we're trying to do in all of our innovation district buildings as we continue to build out. It's all about bringing in third-party companies and researchers that want to be side by side with the university, having access to our faculty, our researchers, our students, and really building a whole innovation community floor by floor. So you don't have to have your own building. You can be embedded right here with the university. So we have Coloma, who is on 2 floors in this building. They have their hydrogen laboratories here. Pelotonia has its headquarters in this building, and Ohio Life Sciences is upstairs as well. They are our newest tenant. Anyone's interested, we have 2,000 square feet still available. Willing to talk to you about that. So if you need some space, come talk to me. Oh, don't know what happened to our photo here. Let's see, there it is. Ta-da. So this is the build out future of what we hope it will look like. As I mentioned, we have 350 acres. We anticipate about 10 million square feet of construction can happen in this area. And we're working with Jobs Ohio on some of the funding mechanisms for infrastructure out here. And so in return for that investment, we are committed to 10,000 new jobs in this area. Who gets to count them? I do. It's a fun annual report every year. To give you an idea of where we are on campus, for those not familiar, main campus is outlined here in yellow. And our innovation district, which is about 25% of the size of main campus, is outlined there in red. And we are sitting where the yellow star is. So you can see that we are that top gateway of how we're going to build out. CAR is within this boundary. So is a lot of parking lots. So we know that we don't have a complete blank slate out here. Some existing facilities are here and they're not going anywhere. But what's great is we have the ability to take a lot of those grassy fields and eventually some of those parking lots and create vertical structure, right? We want to have density out here. We want to have a lot more buildings. We'd like the parking to become structured parking. I saw someone from Dublin here earlier. If anyone has been to Bridge Park in Dublin, Ohio, some of their mixed-use facilities with parking garages, this is about 10 times the size of what they did out in Dublin. So again, high buildings, condensed parking, go vertical, and try to get as many people into this area as possible and take advantage of the acreage that we have here. Here's the master plan blown up. The red buildings at the top are really the next phase. So again, we're sitting up in some of those white buildings toward the right side of the most red. So you can see these white buildings right up here. So the red is the next phase. That's everything out this window. So if you look out this window here where we have grass and we have parking lots all the way to Andelin, which is the gray building off here in the distance, that's the next phase. It will include another Ohio State building called our Commercialization and Entrepreneurship Center, which will house our Center for Software Innovation, as well as some wet laboratories and an incubator, a wet lab incubator for third parties and startups. Beyond that will be housing. So we are bringing in mixed-use development where we will have housing, parking garages, retail, amenities. So again, right, it's not just coming to work. People can actually live here. People can actually recreate here. They can have access to restaurants, things to do, and make it more of a walkable community here. And we've got themes for each of these neighborhoods as we develop them. This neighborhood that we're doing right now, we're calling our Innovation Neighborhood for Life Sciences and Energy. We have a healthcare neighborhood because we do have some of our Ohio State Wexner Medical Center facilities just to the south of here. And then we'll wrap those with more healthcare related research buildings. The Kinnear Road corridor, which you should be familiar with, this is where our engineering, defense, mobility is located. This is where CAR is located. Our new battery lab facility that we've done with Honda is along this corridor as well. And then future growth. So see your logo here. We hope one day we can be working with your companies to bring your own facilities into these future areas. And I often get this question. Someone says, well, what if I want to do energy, but I want to go in the healthcare neighborhood? These boundaries are not set. What we like is that we can intermix and do interdisciplinary research. So just because it says, engineering on the south end of here, it doesn't mean that you can't do it on the north end in our life sciences area. And then covering everything is the AI initiative that the university is doing. Excuse me, so I've got a little frog in my throat. So we're working, our Center for Software Innovation is really going to be spearheading a lot of our AI initiatives. We will be having competency at all levels of undergraduate education here when it comes to AI fluency. And so this is something where as we take AI into every single college and program, how are we going to make sure that we're bringing that into our innovation and our research facilities out on this part of campus? We've invested about $1 million to date. That's since 2019. So we have the Pelotonia Research Building, which is just behind us here that you passed walking in. That's at 95% occupancy. We do have some wet lab space there available for some small startup companies. Our EAIC building here, as I mentioned, we have some suites upstairs that are available, and our James Outpatient Care, which we did a partnership with Nationwide Children's, where we have proton therapy, and so that is next door. Not only is it actively seeing patients, but it also has active research projects. Andelin, who I mentioned, is a private company that leased land from the university and actually built, owns, and operates its own facility here. So they're a good example of what we're trying to do as we bring more companies in that want to be located side by side with us, working hand in hand in research. We have our battery cell research and development center that I mentioned that just opened. That is a fantastic facility. I hope at some point, if you haven't toured it, that we can help arrange that. And then, as I mentioned at the very beginning, this grassy field right here will be our next building that will open in late 2028. We hope to be under construction yet this summer, which will house our CSI, Center for Software Innovation Laboratories, which will also have plenty of space for lease as well. And that's it. Here is a view of what we hope this thing is going to look like. You can see the buildings in white are the future buildings, but this next phase, you can see our solar panel building there right in the foreground. And then as we continue to develop, it will go this way. So stick around. People ask me how long this will take. I say 50 years. So our children will love it. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, Colleen. Well done, and thanks for hosting us. Will you stick around a little bit?
Yeah, I will.
Good, wonderful. So, all right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we dive into our traditional activity, which is a brief overview from me on what the state of things is today. And I'll start out with some personnel topics. Some of you who've been engaged with us over the years have had the pleasure of working with Jim Shively. He spent 22 years at Carr as an electronics technician, an all-around good guy. And he retired, and he's probably busy grinding his hiking miles now, wherever it is that he does that. But anyways, it was, I still remember when we first hired Jim and figuring out what projects to assign him to. He's been of incredible support to all of us in the world of research, but also very supportive of our student project teams and providing expertise and know-how in things related to electrical and electronic systems. One, I'm not making the announcement. I'm telling you when the announcement will be made, but a few months ago, the U.S. Department of Energy, General Motors, Stellantis, the MathWorks, Argonne National Lab, who manages these things, announced a new student competition called the EcoCar Innovation Challenge. We applied for it, and on Monday, I think we will find out what happened. There are two major tracks. You notice that there are two corporate sponsors, General Motors and Stellantis. This is something that hadn't happened in many years, since the years of Future Car in the 90s, where there were multiple automotive sponsors. So Monday, if you're curious to see what happens, you can see there is a live YouTube. I'm sure there will be plenty of announcements after that. That competition is the merging of two competitions our students are involved in these days. One is the Battery Workforce Challenge, where students were challenged to design, manufacture, develop all of the system controls, and integrate this battery pack in a vehicle. The vehicle is a Dodge Ram ProMaster EV, so a delivery van. And what you see here is one of two teams in North America, the other one is in Canada, who actually at the recent workshop demonstrated a complete battery pack. That object that you see there is, what is it, about 75 kilowatt hours, David? Something like that. So, and the box it sits in, the case, is the original case designed for the ProMaster EV. So basically, the challenge of the students was to figure out a way to fit in this box a battery pack that they had made from scratch. And I'm referring to all of the manufacturing and assembly processes, cooling systems, battery management system, and the like. The team is led by Professor Matilde Derpino, and they have done a fantastic job. Competition coming up in early May. And that will be the end of that cycle. We have another team that is coming to the close of its history. the Auto Drive Challenge, sponsored by General Motors and the Society of Automotive Engineers. Here, a team of students led by Professor Kadir Ahmed has developed a fully automated SAE Level 4 vehicle, starting from a production vehicle, a Bolt EUV, and has developed all of the perception, planning, trajectory tracking, and controls for a vehicle that is effectively SAE Level 4 automated driving capable. But well, I'll make another comment. The other vehicle that is closing its cycle, and we hope to then continue with the next EcoCar Innovation Challenge, is the EcoCar EV Challenge vehicle. And when I walked in this morning, it was right there, and I think it is right there. You can see it through that window. And Satvik and Brandon are out there when, if you want to take a peek at it during a break, please do so. Our thanks again to Argonne National Lab, General Motors, DOE, the MathWorks, but also a special shout out to Dana, because that vehicle is fully powered by Dana Electric Drives, 4-wheel drive. And we've had a great partnership with that team, which I think is managed by Brian, who introduced himself earlier. We had an interesting, somewhat surprising thing. Honestly, of all the things that happened, I was not expecting this, but I get a communication from somewhere up high, office of the president or the provost or something, saying, hey, the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, there are 12 banks of the Federal Reserve in the United States. One of them is based in Cleveland for our region. The president of this bank wishes to spend the day at the Ohio State University, and they've expressed a desire to visit CAR. Well, I have given so many tours in my many years at CAR, but this was the first time I hosted a banker. It turns out that Beth Hammack was a pleasure to have, incredibly intelligent woman, and we had some fantastic conversation on economic development. Basically, the idea is, what's the economic impact of the Ohio State University on our region? Well, huge. But the fact that we were asked to be the one technical center that she visited was a great honor. And we spent a little bit of time planning the visit. It wasn't quite as complicated as when President Obama visited us. The security provisions were simpler, a little simpler. But they wanted to make sure that President Hammack met the students, and they chose, after I described all of our various activities, they liked the idea of this battery workforce challenge, in part also because this is a collaboration we have with Columbus State Community College. It's very much focused on the workforce development. And so it was a fantastic visit. And in the lower picture, you see Professor Darpino and President Hammack on the right-hand side talking to some of the students on the Battery Workforce Challenge. It was a very nice visit and unusual things. And you see us with hard hats there because we were able to actually give a tour of our new under construction, but close to completion, Commercial Vehicle Innovation Lab. And I think David Cook later will tell you a couple of things about where we are. So that was an unusual visit that was very pleasant. And then President Hammack moved on to speak with the president of the university, the provost, and all that. But we were the first stop. One of the things that has been happening in recent times is there has been a lot of activity in developing innovative ideas that are worthy of consideration for launching and commercializing new technologies. The Ohio State University offers the opportunity for people to compete for accelerator awards, and we had a couple of successes. Let me also tell you that not too many of these are given within OSU on an annual basis. So we were quite proud to have two. One of them is work that is led by Professor Kadir Ahmed. Raise your hand, Kadir. He just walked in. There he is. And working with our researcher, Nuruddin Javed, they received funding to continue the evolution of technology they've been developing in related to GPS-denied vehicle localization. A second project, and you've heard us talk about, oops, there was a small incident there. just a dummy. Here, I'll run it again in case you got distracted for a second. There it is. So accidents at intersections, and you've heard us talk about this in the past, are a significant fraction of the severe injury and fatalities that take place in everyday traffic. Our team was selected through the Intersection Safety Challenge by the U.S. Department of Transportation. We have an ongoing collaboration with the city of Dublin to demonstrate some of these technologies in a more realistic context. And we thought that some of our ideas were interesting enough that they were worth filing patents and applying for an accelerator award. Well, by golly, they gave us an accelerator award. So we're now moving this technology forward, and we see many opportunities in many different areas. That poor guy keeps getting hit. We also, our researchers are engaged in competing for internal seed grants from organizations around the university that offer seed grant opportunities to create new areas of exploration. Our colleagues, Professor Kadir Ahmed and Dr. Sidra Bhatti, received a grant from the Sustainability Institute. The folks at the Sustainability Institute are very good friends because obviously we are interested in sustainability. Our focus is on the transportation aspects of it. And one of the topics we're working on today in partnership with others as well has to do with the cold chain, the entire process that is connected with the transportation of temperature controlled goods. Just to give you some numbers, and we're working on a much larger program aiming at funding from NSF and USDA in collaboration with Purdue University. But this local project here focuses on some AI techniques for improving data information and data flow related to how to optimize and improve the movement of temperature controlled goods. I'll give you a number. About 15% of all the freight that is transported on a daily basis in the US is temperature controlled goods. Of that, so that's a big number, tens of billions of dollars a year of movement of goods. Of that, about 30% results in spoiled goods. Food spoilage especially is a huge part of that. And if you think about 30% of temperature controlled goods being lost, the opportunities for lowering food costs, improving food quality are significant. So we are working through this small seed grant on creating a team where we speak with people from food science, from agricultural engineering and food engineering. It's a really interesting collaboration. Changing topics completely. We won a couple of seed grants related to quantum computing, related to topics like energy efficient vehicle routing for fleets. And so the idea is that we stay busy and try to maintain a broad outlook for the opportunity to collaborate with our great colleagues here at Ohio State and outside Ohio State. Now, give you an update on a topic that is very important to us. In 1999, CAR launched an industrial consortium, a research organization, pre-competitive research organization, wherein companies, many of you in the room, pay an annual membership fee, and we organize this funding to do some pre-competitive research that is agreed upon by all the members as something that is pre-competitive. It can be shared. We can talk about these things. That model evolved over the years. There have been a couple of times in the past 25 plus years that we've been running this program that has caused us to rethink how we do it. And things are changing very rapidly. And so we are one more time rethinking how do we maintain this program in which we have the collaboration of we hope, all of our industry partners in such a way that it adds and provides value to all of you and allows us to do something very important. This consortium program is, in terms of funding, I've called it in the past the tip of the iceberg. It's in fact half of the tip of the iceberg. If you look at our total research expenditures, probably 5% of that is this membership fee. But it's a very important small piece of the things we do because it allows us to explore new ideas in collaboration with you. It also allows us to have some flexible funding with which we can recruit talented students. The graduate student pipeline is a very important subject for us because we need to feed our laboratories and be able to carry out the research we do with you and with government agencies. So since the meeting we had 6 months ago, we spent considerable amount of time engaging about 20 of our most engaged faculty and research staff to understand what is it that we do and how could we offer our industry partners a model that is more compatible with the rapid and dynamically changing nature of this industry today. So we'll talk a little bit more in detail later about this, but this is an important topic that has occupied quite a bit of our time. And David in the room, or did he step out for a moment? I'll play David then. A number of years ago, we were allocated some funding through the Federal Transit Administration to expand our facilities to enable for more advanced experimentation related to transit buses. That was the original motivation, but more than that, commercial vehicles at large. So what you see here are pictures of the construction site. This is on the north side of the car location, right behind the Student Motorsports building project. And the construction is on target. We are both on budget and on schedule, and we expect that the building will be substantially completed in June, and in late summer, early autumn, it will actually be delivered to us. So 6 months from now, when we do our next advisory board meeting, you may see a lot more of that building. At the moment, one of the reasons we're meeting here, and we're so pleased that Colleen gave us the opportunity to do it in this building, we're meeting here because the construction has essentially eaten up all of our parking space behind car. Eventually, we'll be in good shape when the construction is done, but right now it's we couldn't have hosted the meeting there. One other comment, and I'm using my course as an example. We have been working with many of you on continuing education topics. We have developed customized programs for companies like Honda, General Motors, Stellantis, and others, Schaeffler and others. One of the ideas, we have an excellent office of distance and continuing education centralized in the university that has outstanding facilities and capabilities. And one of the suggestions that came from them was, why don't we think about what we would call public-facing courses? And what we have done in the past is we'll come to a company that has some needs for training. We work out a one-on-one contract. We agree as to what it is that they would like this training to look like. We create the material and develop a program. The first time we worked with the General Motors Technical Education Program was 1996. I developed a course on powertrain dynamics, or a course sequence on powertrain dynamics and control with a couple of colleagues. So this has a long history. But this idea of having public-facing courses is a novelty, and one of the topics that we've covered with many companies over the years is explaining to engineers who are not familiar with the ins and outs of electrification of propulsion systems, how do you get introduced to this topic in a serious engineering focused way, but without so much detail that you might as well come and take my graduate class on the subject. And so we will soon be launching this, and this is something that individuals can enroll in. So our idea is that this might be a tool that could be useful to government agencies, companies that might want to train or educate just one or two engineers. Anything that is larger than that, we can of course work out specialized contracts. So we continue to be as active as we can. And just over the past few days, I've been talking with one of our senior researchers on the topic of, we've got this introduction to electrification of automotive powertrains. What about connected and automated vehicles? Is there room for something that would be an introduction for an engineer who really doesn't know anything about the topic and subject area of connected and automated vehicles? Or maybe a government regulator or an employee of a government agency there. So the next piece of this could be something that is related to the foundational elements of connectivity and automation in vehicles, starting from the history of what was the first automated vehicle function that became officially mandated by NHTSA? Quiz. I'll tell you what it was. Anti-lock brake systems. In the 80s, ABS was an advanced idea, but by the 90s, NHTSA had said this works so well, we're going to mandate it in every vehicle that is sold in the US. Then you go to electronic stability control. Now we have we've had adaptive cruise control for a long time, but with increased braking assist functionality, lateral control, lane keeping. These things are becoming part of the normal landscape of automotive vehicle production, and how does that lead to vehicles that will be increasingly automated in their driving in the future? So who knows, maybe next time we'll talk to you about an outline of what these introductory course might look like. You also know, many of you know, that we do a camp for high school students every summer. We call it Camp CAR. And that's been hugely successful over the years. Part of the problem with the success is that we can only take in so many students. We just don't have the resources. Maybe 20, 30 students has been typically what we can do. For us, it's a great deal because this is a way of recruiting, and the selection is we may take in 20, but we have 200-300 applications. And these are students, many of whom then choose to study engineering at Ohio State. And even if they don't choose to study engineering at Ohio State, but go do it at another university, at least we've increased the number of engineers in our future. So the fact is that we decided to create 2 new one-day programs to increase the number of students we touch. And some of these students who apply, they say, oh, I would really love to learn how to change tires in a car, change spark plugs, do some basic maintenance and the like. Fine, no problem. You want to put your hands on a vehicle, we're going to do a hands-on day where we're going to let you do a lot of, teach you how to do a lot of basic maintenance and use your hands. Another group, on the other hand, will be engaged with faculty and researchers. These are students who maybe are more academically oriented, and so we are going to get them to spend a day sharing time with researchers, a bit like a shadow day kind of thing. So we're trying to engage as many high school students as we can, and we have good relationships with all of the high school systems in our region, in Central. So with that, I think we're ready to move on to the next step, which is to hear updates from a couple of our good partners. And CAR has had an ongoing relationship with an automotive research institute at the University of Stuttgart. That started I have to remember whether it was 98 or 99, but we've been friends for a very long time. And Professor Andre Kulzer, who introduced himself a few minutes ago, has kindly offered to give us a brief presentation, and we tend to think a lot about what happens in the US. It doesn't hurt to understand what the landscape for the automotive sector is.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure to follow Giorgio's asking of Andre, just give an update from Europe and Germany, because strange things don't only happen in US or China or Japan, but Europe has a quite strange and zigzaggy way of doing things. And I would like to give you a short update. I gave the title of Powertrain Diversity because that's usually my slogan: without diversity, no future. And I'll explain it a little bit in short. We need diversity in energy, infrastructure, supply chains, the resilience, so that we can have energy and energy converters, energy carriers that help us bring mobility to all and into all the worlds. And sorry about the Porsche pictures. I was 10 years at Porsche, and that stays a little bit always on my presentations. A quick overview. I have done my PhD in Stuttgart with Professor Bargende, which is a long-lasting friend of Giorgio's. After that, I was almost 10 years at Bosch and 10 years at Porsche, always working in research, advanced engineering, and also series projects, which gave me the opportunity to be hands-on on not only the e-fuels projects from Porsche, but also the Taycan project. So between the double E strategy, like Porsche used to say, so e-fuels and e-mobility, I was able to look at all topics on mobility, not only for sports cars also. One note above is since this year's, I'm also an expert consulting the European Union on automotive sector research and innovation programs for the future, which is also important for me as a professor to get more PhDs funded by the European Union. So that's also quite interesting what's happening in the future. And Giorgio asked me to give a short introduction. So I'll try not to take too much time. I'll go very shortly in 3 slides to a very important topic to me: life cycle assessment, meaning if you really have to look at climate impact or energy impact, cost impact, you have to check the complete life cycle from raw materials, production, suppliers, OEM, use phase, and so on. I'll go shortly into that before going to the main topic: what's happening in Europe and Germany. In special, I have more detailed numbers for Germany regarding cars and also some truck numbers for Europe, and see what's happening with the CO2 legislation in Europe, and wrap up then with some takeaways. Okay, so starting with life cycle assessment, very shortly, maybe most of you know this already, but in EU, almost all the countries in the world have a tailpipe-associated legislation and regulation. There are some countries like Switzerland or Brazil or Japan that have already changed that and are looking at least also at the energy side of things, because energy, electricity, fuel, that's also an impact on CO2, not only the use phase. And adding to that, of course, the production of a vehicle, of a product, of a powertrain has its impact, and we have to look at that. Closing the cycle, of course, with also recycling and so on, which goes back into the manufacturing part. You have to consider everything that you need, not only on energy, product, materials, but also costs of a product, and that's the only way of looking at it. Why am I telling you this? We had an expert group counseling the German government, and they came up with an interesting part of it. Was showing, or at least showing, that politics are looking at the different ways of considering energy in mobility. So they actually looked at the life cycle, kind of cradle to grave assessment with production, the use phase, so the energy supply or fuel supply, the usage phase of the vehicle, and also the recycling end of life phase. And one interesting thing is when I talk to politicians and my colleagues, usually they don't understand why we have to go away from a tailpipe principle. But in fact, they know, and now this is also the message that the politicians understood. I hope that a product is more complex than only the driving phase. And what they did was a comparison of a single combustion engine, or a simple technology like a combustion engine, and against a battery electric vehicle. What is, of course, known is if you look only at the driving mode, the use phase, if you use fossil fuel, of course, you have the CO2 impact of that and the energy impact. The electric vehicle doesn't because it doesn't convert any energy with emissions during the drive mode, but during production of electricity, you have, of course, a CO2 footprint. Even being a windmill or a nuclear power plant, you had to build it. You had much of concrete, steel, oil for the transmission of the windmill whatsoever. There is a CO2 and energy impact on that. So electricity has a CO2 impact. But most important of it is that they noticed, okay, the result of electrification is the focus on energy and CO2 goes back to the supply chain, to the tier 1 suppliers, tier 1, 2, 3, before coming to the OEM. The OEM usually can have, let's say CO2 reduced energy supply for his plant, but having all the subsystems supplied to the OEM, that's the huge part where you have also a CO2 footprint, especially because of battery, copper, lithium, and other products needed for the more modern and electrified technologies. You have there also to look at that impact. And one study we have done in Germany, well, with other European partners also, but this was really a very large life cycle assessment consideration with infrastructure companies, energy companies, tier 1 suppliers, tier 2 suppliers, OEMs, and so on. We try to see what is the holistic approach that or the scenario that gives you the best or reduced CO2 impact on a product. And we gone and tried to have single scenario, single technology scenarios and look at the cumulative CO2 impact. And over the years, having to build up infrastructure for electrification or e-fuels or biofuels or whatsoever takes time, takes money, takes CO2, takes energy. And at the end, many of the single scenarios just came out quite similar, which is not usually, let's say, the differentiation you get when we talked to European politicians in the last years. And what we saw was that if you go into diversification of energy infrastructure and applications, is that you can accelerate, let's say, that impact of cumulative CO2 so that you can have a 30% reduction if you go many ways and not only the single, the silver bullets, for example. So at the end, the summary of this study was that we need all kinds of energy carriers so that we can counteract bottlenecks like supply chain and raw material issues and so on. I don't want to go into much politics, but you don't have everything in Europe or US or in other countries where you can just go one silver bullet and one solution for all. All applications have different needs. So to make it quick, diversification here on technologies and energy is also very, very important. So that was my short introduction to the topic of life cycle assessment. And I'll give you just a short also updates on what's happening in Europe and especially then in Germany also with the new car registrations, for example, for the passenger car registrations. We see that last year we had already around 17% battery electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids almost 10%, almost 35% hybrids, making 61% electrified powertrains already, which is already quite good. On the other side, passenger cars is not everything in mobility. If we look at light duty commercial vehicles and heavy duty, then it's also quite, let's say, application dependent, where you can electrify well. For example, buses and so on. Of course, having a fleet coming every evening or every couple of hours whatsoever into the hub, of course, you can have there a socket, and if you have the energy, then you can electrify. That's the largest chunk, and you have to look at the red line with electrically chargeable vehicle. That's because there are some different combinations or technologies for that. So the buses are for sure a very good way of electrifying. Maybe not long-haul trucks, where you still have, of course, some issues with energy density, Reichweite, so the, how you call it? Range, thank you. And of course, is for an energy-intensive application an issue. So there are still some hurdles to overcome, and it's not the vehicle itself. Let's say to have large batteries, good gears, gearboxes, e-axles, and so on for a truck application. We have that. It's not an issue of the technology. I guess technology for passenger cars, trucks is there already. The problem is the infrastructure and the energy supply. You have to have these to have a mobility system. And that's why, let's say, a holistic view on mobility is necessary to understand where you can electrify or where you have to use some other renewable kind of fuel. Looking at Germany, in Germany, I have much more detailed numbers. So I'm collecting since 2016 the numbers which are very accurate, and I have the numbers here in red because this is an extrapolation from February numbers. I don't have the March numbers yet to look at the year 2026. But what we saw is looking at the green colors like battery electric vehicle and plug-in hybrid, we had a strong push years ago by legislation, which helped electrification in the market. But it's like 5 years now fighting to have a real, let's say, resilient presence in the market. Because electric cars are wonderful. The Taycan is a really great car to run on the Nordschleife also, combustion car also. But it's also, let's say, the needs of infrastructure and energy availability. And in Germany, the energy price is quite relevant. So if you cannot just continue with subventions and state help to buy electric cars, you will have a limit. And at the moment, we are around the 20%. And this will for sure grow, but it's still fighting. We also have a large amount of hybrid electric vehicles, so also totaling over 60% the electrification phase. And let's say the not electrified gasoline or diesel engines are reducing, but these are being converted in hybrid electric vehicles anyway. So having said that, we still have almost 80% of combustion-based powertrains. And if I would, make, let's say, a vision into the future, could be something like this, that in the next decades, we will for sure have a growth of electrification, maybe if we continue with European and German subventions on electrification. But we will still have a long time, a very large chunk of combustion-based powertrains. And well, it's not forbidden to sell combustion engines in the future, starting 2035. We'll talk about that right in a moment. There will be some fines, of course, but if you need a combustion-based, then it will be there. And on the other side, you will be electrifying with a mild hybrid or strong hybrid technology, these combustion engines in the future. So looking outside also of Europe, the status quo, and I took from the Porsche Consulting colleagues some slides. They see that, of course, the US, Europe, and China have different electrification strategies. China going with their 5-year plans very thoroughly, let's say the 5-year plan from the last 10 to 15 years was very strongly electrifying mobility, infrastructure, and so on. But they also have their, let's say, limitations. China is a huge country. And when I'm there, they always tell me, yes, electrification is great because the price is very low. Let's say the price for mobility is great, but if you cannot charge it, it's not so sexy. So they love range extenders. And plug-in hybrids, these are exploding, these two technologies. The gradient of introduction in the market is much higher than the battery electric vehicle. The battery electric vehicle will for sure continue rising, but let's say the range extending technologies like plug-in hybrid or range extender, series hybrid and so on, will continue to grow in China. And maybe that will be also a technology for the rest of the world. Porsche Consulting was also asked to do an extrapolation for 2040, and this is, of course, with stated policies and an EU ambition scenario. It doesn't mean that it will come like that, but if we are very ambitious, we might have combustion based share of mobility down to 40% maybe. Yeah, maybe it will be more, but till 2040, there is still a way to go. And policies change quickly, as we know. Of course, marine and aviation applications are quite dependent of very energy-dense energy carriers, so that will be quite difficult there. So a strong way to have e-fuels and biofuels in these markets, of course, but also the energy-intensive heavy-duty truck market, for example. And having that, maybe the passenger car market will also profit from some renewable liquid fuels, biofuels, e-fuels. For talking about e-fuels, I took also from McKinsey a study which was quite interesting, the global energy perspective, showing that they have for passenger cars, commercial vehicles, aviation, marine, and buildings and industry, the energy demand and the outlook. And they put just the numbers in ettajoules, so quite many zeros there, showing that, yes, we will get more efficient, need less energy in these sectors, maybe not on all sectors, but efficiency will be for sure using electrification, one of the topics. But on the other side, we see the distribution of energy type, beginning with the dark blue fossil, then electricity, hydrogen, others, and the last one, the nicer blue here, the sustainable fuel, showing that on passenger cars, yes, it will be dominated by a part of electricity, not so much hydrogen, but also a relevant part of sustainable fuel in the future. If you go to energy-intensive applications, then hydrogen gets more important alongside with e-fuels and the others. You can see that. But for mobility, it's quite relevant to see that electricity, hydrogen, and sustainable fuels will be quite relevant. And I don't know, looking at the future, if the numbers are exactly these ones, but these three kinds of energy will for sure be very relevant. And Porsche Consulting was also asked to do a trend for e-fuels because there is a very, let's say in the European Union, a very weak policy on e-fuels, but maybe they will change that. but accounting for efficiency increase and reduction of energy demand in transportation, they calculated then the amount of or the fuel demand for a liquid fuel demand. And they saw that with assuming an electrification of the market, the amount of possible production of e-fuels will be enough to cover 100% of mobility by 2042 with these assumptions, of course. But this means that e-fuels will be relevant also in the future and also in ambitious prospects. So e-fuels is also a very good energy carrier, and we will have to look at that. Looking at legislation, many things happened in Europe last year from many considerations. Also, Germany finally stood up and said, well, electro only might not be the right way. Please let us be more technology open, and we need more flexibility. And that was one of the many inputs to the European Union that helped. I myself was in Brussels talking about these topics, and I guess all of us helped a little bit to change things. But Europe, yes, they did change something, but it is not yet technology open like they want to say. What they did say is, yes, they want technology neutrality, but if you look correctly at the numbers, well, this is still a statement on the paper. They reduced, let's say, the demands by 2035 to have 100% reduction of tailpipe reduction. But let's say these 10% are only 3% by e-fuels and 7% by green steel. So hydrogen-based steel production and so on. So there is still a continuous, let's say, limitation of bringing energy diversity into the legislation. And also for heavy duty, they went down, or for vans, for light, commercial vehicles, they went down from 50% reduction to 40% emission reduction, which is not that much yet. And one thing that was not so cool is that they said, well, that's correct, that 60%, around 60% of the passenger cars are corporate fleet cars, meaning corporate fleets have a huge leverage in bringing technology into the road. So they said, well, but for companies, we want to have electric only almost. So they have like 2/3 have to be battery electric by 2035, and the rest might be some plug-in hybrids, but they are going very strongly again into this electro-only policy. Don't understand me wrong, I'm fully for electrifying powertrains, and I think an electric machine is one of the best energy converters we have. But we need diversity and resilience in energy and technologies to be able to go into the future, and policies are not yet supporting that kind of resilience. I have some extra slides here, but I will pass this on. This might be then distributed so that you have some more details on the usual legislation and some key issues from that side. So I would like to wrap up my short talk just telling you that in the future we need this kind of mix of electrified and defossilized technologies. I like to focus always in this defossilized word because usually politicians and media use decarbonized. If we look at that on a scientific point of view, decarbonizing would be destroying life on Earth, because we are carbon and hydrogen and oxygen, and decarbonizing would not be very cool because we would be destroying nature. So I want to focus, we will need defossilized and electrified technologies. And we have, if you look at the potential of sun, wind, and other technologies, we have enough potential. We don't harvest it, but we would have. but usually not where, when, or how we can store this energy. So we need for sure, for having this very noble electric energy, we need kinds of storing it, meaning pumping water up the hill or making an e-fuel using biofuel. We need other ways of molecularly storing that energy. And with the life cycle assessment, helps us from a scientific point of view to understand which is the impact. And we need for sure to electrify, to make efficient everything what we can. But additionally, we have to use hydrogen technologies, bio and e-fuels to have other energy carriers which are also renewable. And talking about policy, we have to look for also regulation that supports a faster climate mitigation by using diversity of technology to use resilient technologies and energy carriers. And most of all, being a professor like Giorgio, we need, of course, skilled students, scientists, and engineers to tackle these challenges. And thanks for having me. And it's an honor to be here and to discuss with you. Thank you.
Any quick questions for Andre?
Go ahead.
I've always been curious when you're looking at the life cycle analysis, or when somebody looks at a life cycle analysis. So the slide where you had from cradle to grave, basically, we're looking at it from the state of technology today. And those things, I mean, if you looked at it 5 years ago and we look at where we are today, right, there's quite a bit of change. And when you talk to the regulators, how do you think about including that this is not a steady state, but there may be more nuclear or more natural gas than coal for that one slice? There may be better production systems because electric vehicles and those technologies are new. How do you think about sort of planning a little bit ahead?
Well, life cycle analysis technology is a huge science, and all over the world you have different ways of looking at it. And you're right, one of the very important factors is what are the boundary conditions you set for having that kind of calculation. And the scenario, is it status today or status in 10 years? You can do that, and you can also talk with legislators that way. But sometimes it's difficult to look into the future. You can quite well analyze the technology you have today and the cost of it and what you will have in 10 or 20 years. There are many assumptions, and depending on the organization doing, or the lobby organization, I would almost say, doing the life cycle analysis, it will be adapted to what the legislator wants to hear. I'm so blunt and say it like this because I have seen it too often. And maybe one note, talking to politicians, if you are in a closed room, they fully understand the issue. But when they go then into, let's say, the parliament, when they have to take position, they will take the position of the party, the association they are representing. And that part is for me the most tough one, because we as professors, we are devoted to science and we want to talk what are the facts. And when you get to these kinds of discussions, sometimes the facts are adapted to what the legislator wants to hear. So yes, you have to adapt to the future, the life cycle analysis, with the kind of energy, the cost that it will have also. In many of these life cycle analysis, there are also all the costs for the setup of new plants, new energy plants, being nuclear, wind, whatsoever, to consider the, let's say, the energy and the material cost of that complete life cycle. Yeah. Thanks for the question.
What are your thoughts on the cost of this technology and how we're going to come down the cost curve to get to the point where there will be mass adoption? Because I hear a lot about range anxiety and charging stations and those to try to enable the technology. But if the technology is not at an affordable cost, that's still going to be a huge barrier.
Thanks for the question. Very valid question. That's also always my one of my considerations because I have grown in 3 different countries. I have traveled a lot, also in Africa where you don't have roads. So cost is for most of the people the driver for everything. And one criticism I have, for example, in Europe, is that if you go using subventions a too long time, it's just using tax money to push a technology. Sometimes you need to do that, but you cannot do that continuously. So cost will be for sure, let's say, the driver for the success of a technology into the market. In Germany, I usually tell my students, it's a difference between an invention and an innovation. An invention, we have many, but an innovation is first when an invention is going into the market and resiliently staying in the market because it is available and it is, I don't want to say cheap, but affordable to the people. So I believe that point is very important. And maybe not all technologies will be affordable. And maybe that's one of the most important parts where technology will come into the market all around the world. And maybe the most expensive battery electric vehicles are great technology demonstrators. But to have an affordable mobility, you have to have affordable technology. Yes, that's one important point. Thanks.
Just curious, for a while there was a push in Europe on using hydrogen in the combustion engines, especially in the commercial vehicles. So I was just curious, what's the latest status on that?
Thank you for that. I didn't put it in because it's quite recent. In the last months, there have been many, let's say, companies like Daimler Trucks and other truck companies supporting that quite strongly in Brussels for the EU legislation. And yes, hydrogen has had a hype again in the past, and it went a bit down, but it looks like that Europe is still wanting to have that as a clean energy carrier, because as I talked that the storage issues for electricity are an issue. And for example, Germany in summer has so much installed renewable energy that they have to pay a fine to Switzerland for Switzerland to buy electricity. And in Switzerland, they have lots of water plants that you can just put water up the hill, like I would say in German. And that's a great way of storing energy in a potential that you can use it anytime. So storage is for sure a very important issue, and this will take decades. So it's not a short-term solution. But if you don't try to support hydrogen, it will never come, because you need the production, you need the storage, you need the distribution. There are many infrastructure topics missing, and you have to support that, or you will never have this storage capability. And then you can use it, but usually in Europe, there is a consensus that you will use it on energy-intensive applications, heavy-duty trucks, long-haul trucks, and these kinds of trucks that have hubs that have the ability of refueling the hydrogen in certain points. That will continue to be supported.
Thank you very much, Andre. Excellent. Yeah. Interesting to get a broad overview of what things look like on the other side of the ocean. And we're going to change topics in a pretty dramatic way. It's a pleasure to have with us today Brianna Badanes, who's Managing Director for Communications and Policy of Drive Ohio, to give us an overview of where the automated vehicle landscape is today. And Brianna, there are many people who are driving from out of Ohio here, so please explain to them what Drive Ohio is.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, so I'm Brianna Bedanes. I'm Managing Director of Communications and Policy for Drive Ohio. And for those that aren't familiar, Drive Ohio operates as a division within the Ohio Department of Transportation that covers emerging transportation technology. So in our portfolio, we have electrification and alternative fuel technology. We have connected and automated technology, both on the ground and in the air. So our drone technology and advanced air mobility is also under our umbrella, but for the purposes of today, we're going to stick to the ground. Drive Ohio was created in 2018. So as you can imagine, technology has changed quite a bit. It started maybe with a focus on testing and research, and now we are seeing a pivot, particularly with automated vehicle technology, towards operations and commercialization. There seems to be a growing federal interest in accelerating the adoption of this technology, but we feel within the state that we're at a pretty critical point that we can't wait for federal legislation because automated driving systems are not a thing of the future anymore. They are operating commercially on roads in America, and we want to make sure that our priorities are aligned as the national momentum keeps up. So the AV Collaborative was born. It was an initiative between our team at Drive Ohio and the Ohio State Highway Patrol to convene stakeholders across many different subject matter experts, different sectors to basically come together to advocate for smart AV policy that would enable responsible and safe scaling. So we want policy that will balance both innovation and safe and responsible pairing. So as part of this effort, we are benchmarking other states' policies and tracking federal laws that are introduced. So I'll go over those in a little bit. But essentially what we're trying to avoid is policy patchwork. So there's a Ohio State Highway Patrol captain that loves to tell a story that he and his buddies were taking a motorcycle ride from Ohio to Michigan. Ohio is not a helmet state, Michigan is. So they're all on their motorcycles, they pull over at the state line and they put their helmets on when they get to Michigan. So obviously it's burdensome for companies, but it's also not practical for AVs. We can't have AVs pulling over at the state line to change configurations based on different jurisdictions from state to state. So that's what we're trying to avoid. And, the momentum's building at the federal level, but we really want to be proactive. So in the next 6 months, we are going to convene this group to work towards some comprehensive policy recommendations. So I'm going to start kind of zoomed out on some of the federal legislation and policy that we're tracking, and then I'll zoom into Ohio. So the America Drives Act was introduced last year. That creates a national framework for autonomous commercial trucking. It specifically enables level 4 and level 5 trucking on interstates. And it gets rid of a lot of the human-centered requirements like hours of service, drug testing. It modernizes safety requirements. So instead of if you don't have a human to get out and set out the triangles when your truck is disabled, it allows cab-mounted beacons for safety warnings. The Self-Drive Act is another piece of legislation that was introduced earlier this year by Congressman Latta from Ohio. That creates a comprehensive framework for deploying AVs. It sets national standards for level 4 and level 5 automation, which doesn't exist today. It also creates a data repository for AV safety and creates a safety assessment process for manufacturers to follow. Also last year, NHTSA released some AV framework meant to accelerate AV adoption. It encourages manufacturers to seek exemptions. So Zoox, the AV manufacturer, Zoox right now has a exemption request in with NHTSA to waive requirements for things like steering wheels, foot pedals, windshield wipers. The Zoox vehicles do not have any of those because they're purpose built for autonomy. So that's out for public comment right now. I think comments are actually due today. So it'll be interesting to see how NHTSA responds to that request. But generally, NHTSA's framework reinforces that federal oversight should be with the vehicle safety and then leaves the operational rules to the state. The executive order that's up there kind of continues the trend in the United States of banning foreign adversary technology that could pose a risk to national security. It obviously has a direct correlation to AV technology that relies on sensors and connectivity that are often sourced globally. And then the last one, the automatic emergency braking proposed mandate. So we know a lot of modern vehicles have this technology integrated into them already. So a proposed mandate just really reflects the federal government's emphasis on safety and how safety directly ties to automated vehicle technology and features. So this map kind of gives you a picture. There's a lot of different versions of this because policy is always changing, but a couple of takeaways. One, getting back to the policy patchwork, this does a really good job of visualizing like why it's important that we can't just have states doing their own thing all across the country on a sustained period of time. Because you can see in the southern half of the United States where a lot of the dark blue is, there is a clear path for commercial operations for AVs, but not so much in the north. The other takeaway is that there's a lot of states on this map that are silent. And maybe once upon a time, it was thought that silent was a good thing because you're not prohibiting the operation. But we, through this initiative, have met with lots of AV companies, including Waymo, Kodiak, and Aurora recently, and they all say the same thing. If you're silent, we're not going to operate in your state because while you're not prohibiting us right now, that could change at any time, and that's too much of a risk for them to take. So the bottom line is companies are watching closely and they need confidence that Ohio is open for innovation, and they need clear policy that explicitly allows them to operate. So part of our collaborative will be benchmarking what these other states are doing, and common elements are safety, redundancy, traffic law, insurance, registration, and licensing. So things that the state is already kind of handling, we have to figure out how we translate that into this new technology. This is another initiative. So states are trying to figure this out, but we are not trying to figure it out in a vacuum. We are constantly collaborating with other states. Regionally in the United States, this is an effort led by ODOT, led by Nick, who's in the room, and coordinates with 8 other states we basically pool funding to coordinate research that would benefit all the states. So there are 2 current research projects, one being on remote operations. So researching what remote operations look like depending on the company, how remote operations are communicated to the rider, if it is, and how it impacts law enforcement. And then the second project that they're working on revolves around AV safety and kind of looks to answer the question of what makes an AV safe for public roadways. So there's lots of different factors. It considers there including law enforcement interaction and current roles and responsibilities. And so the goal of these 2 projects is to pop out some guidance that then can be shared across states, shared with policymakers as we consider what that policy looks like. Okay, so zooming into Ohio, Ohio doesn't currently have any laws and statute on the books right now for AVs. Instead, the policy has been set through executive orders and administrative actions. So we have a current executive order that allows testing of AVs on Ohio's public roadways. The companies are required to register with Drive Ohio. They provide basic information rather about their operations, including their safety and their law enforcement interaction plan, operator information, and where they're going to be so that we can kind of have a pulse on what activity is happening in our state. So clearly this gives us an opportunity, and as we were founded in 2018, it was considered, very forward thinking to give us this pathway to allow testing on the roadways. It focused on testing. So now we're kind of at that pivot point. How do we change that focus from testing to a pathway to operations? So the executive order allowed us to do a lot of projects with AVs that related to research. One of them is our Smart Mobility Corridor on 33. That is a testing zone for connected and automated vehicle technology. The state contributed funding to the Smart Center at the TRC, which is a great place for AV companies to test in a closed setting before they are ready for public road deployment. We have a current project on I-70 that's a collaboration with between ODOT and the Indiana Department of Transportation to accelerate truck automation specifically. So we have a couple of deployments for that project. The first being a platooning deployment where the two trucks are connected via technology and the first truck controls the movements of the second truck. And so those operations took place between Columbus and Indianapolis. That deployment just wrapped up recently. And then the second deployment is out on the road still from Nussbaum Transportation, who is headquartered in Illinois. And they are making deliveries, single truck with level 2 technology. Basically, a lot of driver assist features that exist in modern cars today are stacked in their trucks. So it has enhanced lane keep assist, blind spot warning. It has a feature that if in the unlikely event that the driver would have a medical emergency, it would detect that, pull the truck over and turn on the hazard. So just a lot of safety features in their commercial operations between Ohio and Indiana. This project is one where we intended to deploy even higher levels of automation. We wanted to see all the different levels, and it was really hard to find high automation companies willing to come do a project like this with us with no path to sustained operations once the project's complete. So you'll see it in the picture, Kodiak, which is a self-driving truck company that operates currently across the southern part of the US. They did come to the TRC recently and did a demonstration to expose folks to the technology and show what level 4 technology could do. So we had them run through a few different scenarios like driving through a work zone, passing a slow moving vehicle. So that was part of the project. But again, not willing to start commercial operations as part of a project when they can't continue when the project's done. So all of these really focus around the question of how the state moves policy to evolve from testing to adoption. So kind of a timeline for this effort. We have our group kind of divided into smaller groups with subject matter experts based on topics. Those groups meet monthly. The idea is that we come up with a policy document that has the topic, what the policy gap is, and then how we recommend addressing that gap. And so once we have that document, a draft of that document ready, we intend to engage industry because that's critical to the success of everyone being able to advocate for policy that will ultimately be implemented. So we expect to engage industry this summer with the final recommendations document released in the October timeframe, followed by lots of coordinated outreach and advocacy so that we can find a champion in the State House and get this going. That's all I have. Any questions?
Truly an excellent, no, don't go away yet because we'll see if there are some questions, but that was really an excellent overview of things. Questions on the space of automated vehicles and related topics. We have a lot of ongoing intersections with things that ODOT does through Drive Ohio and in other ways. Nick, any comments from you would like to add? Yeah, awesome. Brianna, thank you so much. And it's always absolutely stunning when you look at the schedule and we are exactly on time. You never know. Thank you, Brianna. It was perfect. So we have a bit of a break now. There are some outstanding, talented youngsters out there with posters. If you want to see a little bit more of the technical details of some of the things we do, and we'll reconvene here in 30 minutes. There are mid-morning snacks. In Italian, it's called merenda, and coffee. So please take a break, and we'll be back here in half an hour. The trouble is when people start talking to the students, they get all excited. Lots of things to talk about. Got to work to bring you back in. All right, so a small test here. I see the Prabjot is still outside, I think, but I have a question. Who had the privilege of meeting and knowing Dwight Blazer? Gary, does that name ring a bell from your GM days? Right, I'm sure Prabjot knows him. Dwight Blazer was a graduate of mechanical engineering at Ohio State and was a director in General Motors R&D Center for a number of years, working on topics related to vehicles at large. Dwight was a very good friend of Ohio State and one of the original members of the External Advisory Board of CAR back in the days when Don Hauser was the director. So Dwight was very dedicated to us. When he retired from General Motors, he donated more of his time to us to help us with planning, strategic planning for the center. And he passed away many years ago in a very untimely fashion. And here's a picture. If you look carefully, there is the light, highlight there, the spotlight on Dwight, actually sitting next to me. That guy who actually had hair on his head at the time was it was a few years ago. Anyways, Dwight's example, the example he set in providing guidance and advice to us and guiding our growth and strategic thinking, we decided to recognize by creating the Dwight Blazer Meritorious Service Award. Every year we recognize one of our partners, and any Blazer awardees in the room? The answer is absolutely yes. I think there are some, a number of people who've been recognized in the past. And unfortunately, because of personal circumstances that have to do with personal family issues, the person who will be recognized today is not with us. And I'm really sorry about that. That was not his plan. But it is a great pleasure to recognize Kent Helfrich, another name that may be familiar to some of you, and certainly many of you have met Kent in these meetings. He really was planning to be here, but something beyond his control happened in the family. Kent served as the Vice President of Global Research and Development and Chief Technology Office for General Motors until fairly recently. And he was also the president of GM Ventures, the GM investment capital arm. He was engaged in leading the company's global innovation strategy, had previously been executive director of global electrification and battery systems, spent a little bit of time at Flex Automotive as an executive, but was also very much involved in the development of GM's electrical architecture and software division. I first met Kent when he was advanced engineering director in powertrain controls many years ago. He received a BS in electrical engineering from Ohio State and an MBA from Duke University. And I'm really sorry that Kent can be with us today. We will find a way to take some nice pictures later, but we wanted to announce the fact that he's been recognized as one of our great champions and supporters. And today he has retired from General Motors. He's acting as an independent consultant, and he's a person I can call on short notice and ask questions. He's really been wonderful to us. So the next topic, I think we're going to sing a duet. Come on up, Cam. So I made a brief mention early in our meeting during my State of the Center summary about the fact that we would talk about our membership consortium plans for the future. And I mentioned that we have gone through the process of thinking about it, listening, talking to you individually. We've talked to many of you. And the background for those who are not familiar with the structure of this is that as far back as 1999, we created an industrial consortium wherein companies pay an annual membership fee. We pool these funds and do pre-competitive research projects, exploratory research projects on topics that are not specific to the product development strategies of the company. Most of the companies in this room are current members or have been members in the past. And this is a little bit different from what the National Science Foundation calls an industry university cooperative research center, but somewhat similar. NSF selects topics, and I just wanted to introduce one person in particular. Antonio, I'll put you on the spot for just a second. You don't have to do anything, but I wanted to reintroduce Antonio Ramirez, a professor of welding engineering. Antonio is the director of one of the most successful NSF IUCRCs. How many industry members do you have? Can you believe that? 55 companies. The topics of their Industry University Cooperative Research Center are, of course, focused on joining technologies. And so that is a very successful enterprise, to some extent governed by NSF guidelines, but very similar to the things we've been doing with you over the years. Our challenge is that the automotive industry is changing at a pace that would have been unthinkable 10 years ago. And so we're trying to figure out how do we engage all of you in a way that makes sense. And so we decided to revisit this program. Again, it's been in place for a very long time. And we decided to revisit things and create a series of activities that we're summarizing for you today to imagine how do we move forward. So Cam Racy, one of our program managers who has worked until the recent past on the NextCar, our PAI NextCar program, and is the program manager for the DOT University Transportation Center on position navigation and timing security. With the end of the NextCar program, suddenly he had a few hours available and was kind enough to take the lead. So explain what you did.
Sure. So as part of going through this process, we wanted to basically take a look internally at the things that we do best, things that we need improvement on. And but the way we wanted to do that was taking all of our research faculty and staff and going offsite and just spending some time defining that. So let me see here. So essentially what we did was a 3-hour session where we brought everyone together and we went through 3 activities. So the first one was this rosebud and thorn activity. And the purpose of this was, as I said, to draw out what's working, what our opportunities are, and then the main points or pain points, sorry. And the way we did this was collecting virtual sticky notes. So everyone was gathered in the same room, but instead of writing on a physical sticky, we had this system that we use that would gather them all in real time and kind of put them up on the board. But this slide really summarizes what came from all of those sticky notes that we collected. And so what's working, basically everyone kind of landed on the fact that we've had some really strong engagement with all of you. Also, our student recruitment pipeline consistently came up as well. We also defined that the industry sees CAR as a safe space to explore the pre-competitive research that Giorgio has been talking about. And also we've had great success with seed funding to enable some new assets within CAR's ecosystem. In terms of the opportunities that came up, we thought that maybe attracting companies that weren't yet ready for fully funded projects would be a good one, lowering that barrier for entry. Then we also decided that, you know, making sure that you all know what your return on investment is in a more clear fashion is a, you know, point of opportunity. More flexible membership terms, and then just more hands-on proof of concept demonstrations. Then finally, we moved on to the thorn activity. So essentially what's not working. And what we heard was internally, you know, our OSU funding cycles don't always line up with company funding cycles. And even when they do, sometimes it's hard to get signatures at the right time. And it's hard to align, you know, even multiple companies on a project. We're not always able to reach the right people at the right time as well. Sometimes project selection is a bit opaque. And finally, just mapping the diverse expertise that CAR has not always been straightforward. So when we're asked what we do and what we do best, we don't necessarily have a really great answer on paper. So the next was a business model canvas. So we spent this next hour with the same sticky note process, just writing down what we believe that our members value the most from the relationship. And it came back again to the student recruitment pipeline, to networking with everyone, the technical seminars and knowledge exchange that we have and facilitate here, and then just access to the faculty and staff that are working on this every day. So from all of that, we determined that what we think is our strongest differentiators are the students, the facilities, simulation tools, our analysis and modeling, the faculty and staff, and then the interdisciplinary collaboration that we're able to offer. And finally, in the last hour, still the same process, similar to the sticky notes. You can see here, and I don't expect you to be able to read any of this, but we asked everyone to write down what they're working on, what they're interested in researching, maybe tools and processes they use. And very quickly it got super messy, and we tried to organize around some of these bubbles that you see, but it was just kind of a quick and dirty assessment of just everything that we touch. And so from this map, we distilled our 6 pillars, which broadly defines what we do. So pillar 1, and these are all on the handout that you guys have in front of you in more detail, but pillar 1 is advanced propulsion, energy conversion, and thermal systems. Then we move into the battery and energy storage systems, then autonomous, connected, and software-defined mobility, mobility systems and infrastructure integration of those systems, cybersecurity, and then finally pillar 6 is kind of like an overarching pillar that we can kind of plug in wherever we want. So the digital engineering, the modeling, and the predictive intelligence. And so these pillars are each backed by dedicated faculty and staff because they are the ones that came up with these pillars, and active graduate students. And we've tied that all back to some of our physical lab infrastructure as well. So on the sheet in front of you and as part of the slide deck that you'll see later on, didn't want to get too deep into these pillars, but this is kind of a template for what we put together. So we went through the topics and research areas, then what we thought the value to industry is, and then finally we tied that to the physical assets at CAR. And actually on the slide deck, you'll see an additional block here for the tools and methods that we use. So I don't know if you want to continue. Yeah.
Trying to find a process and a way of engaging your companies that works for you and that builds on this long history over 25 years of partnership through these consortia. And we have at times focused on very specific sub areas over the years. But in recent years, one of the criticism we've heard has been that things are a little bit too scattered. We do a lot of different things. And so to make a comparison with Antonio's IUCRC, everything they do has to do with joining things. Okay, yeah, there are many different methodologies, techniques, need for developing new theories, new methods, et cetera, et cetera. We are much more scattered. There are things that range from cybersecurity to the aging and degradation of lithium batteries, for example, completely distinct topics. And so we need to figure out a way to continue our relationship in a way that allows us to leverage our expertise in so many different areas, but that also can be measured and quantified in your organizations. We understand, we've already said that the talent pipeline is a good asset. Most of you are working with some of our research faculty and staff. So you know that we have excellent capabilities, and you also know that it's entirely possible to do things in a safe space where we know how to respect what is confidential and proprietary information, and we understand how to work together on things that are more open. So how do we redefine, I'm moving to the right-hand side, how do we redefine this value exchange between us, broaden the relationship to perhaps do more or different things than what we've done in the past, and try to make this model work in an industry that literally from one year to the next is rapidly changing direction as the market changes for a number of reasons. And this is a conversation, I was just talking to Chad about this, holy cow, where like every time we talk, things have changed, okay? And I've had similar conversations with many of you. How do we keep up with all of these transitions? So we are then ready to move on with a path forward that wishes to continue the engagement, change the rules of engagement a little bit, and try to build a relationship with you that is beyond a specific topic. Sure, we've done research with Company X on electrochemical energy storage systems and on with Company Y on cybersecurity, for example, but we would like to have relationships that are not specific to a single topic. So what we're thinking is to make the barrier to entry lower, and imagine that a base membership and access to core benefits that we're going to define in a moment would actually be a lower cost and easier entry, but at the same time maintaining the opportunity to do deeper engagement with you, what we call the member directed projects or platinum membership projects. We don't want to take that opportunity away, but we don't want to make it a requirement for being part of this shared organization. And so the idea is that on the subject of providing some value, which with services that we'll describe in a moment, core benefits, we would like to have as many members as possible. Some of the members might become more directly engaged in doing specific research topics, but one of the challenges that became clear to us, and I think it's true for you as well, is trying to align projects, for example, to an academic year or a calendar year so that you have a uniform year 2025 project portfolio is practically impossible because the project ideas, the funding provided by the companies, they don't necessarily align. It's nice for us to say, whatever, October 1, January 1, but it doesn't work that way. So why not have a system in which there is sort of a baseline of activities that we can do on an annual basis without any hesitation? But then if a member wishes to take advantage of the benefits of doing these pre-competitive projects, and the benefit of the pre-competitive projects is that you can take advantage, as long as this is understood to be shared information, the university allows us to essentially offer you a more attractive cost structure. Sure, these are small projects. Typically, you'll fund one graduate student. That's the extent of it to do something. But could we also answer questions that you have that might be shorter term questions. You say, gosh, we need to do this analysis to make some internal decisions. Can you in 6 months generate, massage this data and generate some results for us? And one of the great things about CAR is that in addition to having access to some brilliant students, some of them are sitting in the room right now, we also have exceptionally capable full-time research staff. So the possibility that we might do a 3-month or a 6-month engagement, even though it doesn't align itself with the graduation plans of a master's student, for example, it's still quite possible. So we'd like to be more flexible. In fact, yesterday evening in our conversation, Prabjot used the word agile. I like that a lot. We're going to use that. Okay. So the idea is, can we do more in different things? So what would this core membership look like? Well, we will continue to have the usual things we do, access to faculty, participation in the advisory board. We have a package of discounts on continuing education and engineering services. But what we think we're going to do is have a more organized process for sharing with you some of our learning and knowledge in the form of, perhaps, these are all ideas at the moment, doing in conjunction with the advisory board meeting, so twice a year, could we imagine having a workshop the day before? So yesterday, we could have had some technical workshops here on some very specific focus areas on topics that are relevant to maybe not to all of you, but to many of you. And introducing new topics that could have to do with some of our experiences in research funded by the federal government. It could be some of the innovative work we're doing in-house. So that's one subject area that is a possibility, and I think we will begin to work on organizing these things. But the other idea that is related to this is that we can also create a focus program of, and this can be delivered online, so think of it as webinars, but a focus program that go into depth in some specific aspect of some of the things we're doing that some of your technical people in your organizations could be interested in. The trouble with organizing a workshop here, it's a nice idea. Some people would like to come. You get to see our facilities as well, but it's limiting in terms of how many people can come. But if we organized a regular series of in-depth technical seminars on topics that we could discuss with you, this is something that would bring us into your organizations. And I've already heard some very good feedback on this, because instead of asking people who are in Auburn Hills to say, will you drive 4 hours to Columbus and then 4 hours back, you can say, look, on Tuesday, there is a 2-hour seminar on some aspects of cybersecurity related to navigation systems in automobiles, where our expert will explain these things. Well, it's much easier within the organization, within the company, to spread this information out. It also makes it easier for your technical people to know more about us. You who come to our meetings and are dedicated to being part of this advisory board, of course, see us a couple of times a year, but there are many people in your companies who might benefit from something like this. So these are some of the ideas we have, and I think that there is a plan now, and I'll let you close with next steps, okay? So these are ideas. We had a conversation yesterday evening with the executive committee. Some of you are hearing these things twice, but we had an in-depth conversation, had some good feedback. Generally speaking, it was taken in a positive way. And so we'll come back and try to now refine some of these ideas with you.
Yeah, so from here, what we would like to do is take the concept that we shared today and launch a very short survey just to get some feedback on what you think this, like, is this of value to you? Do you, are these things that you're seeing things that you like, things that you don't like. We want to test what the new pricing structure could look like, and these results will then directly shape the model that we plan to launch hopefully in autumn at the next EAB. So as Giorgio said, this summer we plan to work through what the workshops and seminar program design could look like to better define that. We've already been collecting some internal research concepts that we can think about delivering and some potential topics. Also in the summer, we're going to be drafting a membership packet, and we want to be just a lot more explicit about, you know, the governance structure and the things that we're bringing to you, and just more transparency in general. So yeah, and then finally, as I said, the full model launch, we're hoping to do that at the next EAB. So yeah.
Yeah, Cam and I and David and Meg, who are the team that has worked together to sort of process through, think through these ideas. We're here, lunchtime, chat with us. We had very good conversations yesterday evening, so we'll continue. And Cam, thank you very much. I think you made a difference. It's awesome to have a person with good thinking capabilities and good organizational capabilities. So I'll close by saying that the Center for Automotive Research is almost 35 years old. We will be 35 years old in 6 months when we get together again, and there might be some special events and plans for that. It's possible. But we would like to work with you to figure out how we can continue to work together for at least the next 35 years. So with that, I think there is a little bit of a slight change in plan. Some of you yesterday evening met John Horak, our new Senior Vice President for Research. He's coming. He wants to talk to you. But being the Senior Vice President for Research, it's difficult for him sometimes to be on time. So he's on his way. And what we'd like to do is anticipate one of the future of the presentations that were scheduled for today. And I'd like to invite Professor Jana Hauser to come and talk to us. And this is a change in topics. It's a cool change in topics. So I'm trying to, there you go. We're going to talk about Skylar 3, and I'm not going to steal any of your thunder or any of your tornado.
Thanks very much, Giorgio. Hello, everybody. I'm Jana Hauser. I'm faculty here at OSU in the geography department. I teach atmospheric sciences, so I am not an engineer. I don't really do anything very cool with vehicles except what I'm going to show you now. So by trade, I am a tornado chaser. I study tornadoes. So I'm going to be talking to you about a really fun project that is being funded by OSU internally through a Good to Great grant, which was an initiative a couple years ago. OSU, out of the goodness of their hearts, decided to fund me to build a mobile radar unit to take into the field and collect data on a variety of weather phenomena. But my passion is tornadoes, so that's one of the things that we can do with this. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about this project and how CAR is involved as well. So first of all, a little bit of background, because I realize I'm not talking to a meteorology audience here, so I figure you might need a little bit of calibration. So first of all, what is a radar in the first place? A radar is an instrument that transmits an electromagnetic pulse of energy, so kind of think about like a flashlight turning on and off. We do this similarly with invisible microwave energy, and we're doing this to detect the location, intensity, and movement of objects in the atmosphere. So specifically, we're interested in precipitation. The wavelength of this instrument is going to be typically between 1 millimeter and 10 centimeters. The wavelength of mine is 3 centimeters. So what we're specifically trying to detect is areas of rain, snow, sleet, hail, and then we can even, with some cooler technology, detect differences between weather objects and non-weather objects. So what happens is the radar turns on, it transmits this pulse. That pulse of energy propagates through the atmosphere at the speed of light. It stops, the radar stops transmitting and then enters what we call a listening mode. So that energy travels through the atmosphere until it encounters some kind of object, which we refer to as a scatterer or a series of these objects. And then that energy hits these objects, and some of that energy gets scattered back into the direction of the radar. As the radar is listening for this, it receives the energy and then can come up with some pretty cool information based upon the wave package that is returned to the radar. So one of the new advanced areas of radar technology is called phased array technology. This is almost in principle exactly the same as the way things like cell phone towers work. Cell phones work with phased array type of EM energy. So a traditional dish, which we see up here on the upper right-hand side, most of us are probably used to seeing things like this periodically, maybe as we're traveling or in a variety of different locations. The National Weather Service has a whole suite of these ground-based large dish radars, and they're okay, but they take a long time to collect data. So physically, you get one beam of energy that is formed by a parabolic dish like this. And in order to collect data, you have to physically move the dish. So wherever that little center part on the dish is located, that represents the center line of your atmospheric beam that's moving out and collecting data. We can make this more eloquent by generating a series of much smaller little mini antennas and organizing those in a square array such that when we transmit at slight time differences across each and every one of those little tiny elements, we can almost instantaneously change the direction of propagation through a series of constructive and destructive interference. So this allows these phased array antenna to collect data much more quickly than a traditional one. So we can almost instantaneously collect data three-dimensionally. And so I'm not sure if this is going to work. That's all right. This was just a fun little animation that shows the idea of the beam forming as different times as the energy is being transmitted through each one of these little array elements there. Oh, wait, there we go. I was gonna say, I thought it was working. So you can see like whichever element transmits first, that is gonna govern the direction that that beam is propagating. So we do this in microseconds and swap these various different transmissions, and we can steer the beam electronically, which makes data acquisition much, much more rapid. Why are we interested in doing this on a vehicle? What's the point? Well, the point is that we can position our facility in considerably closer proximity to whatever we're wanting to collect information on. So for my purposes, we want to find a storm. We want to drive this vehicle to the storm and collect data on this close up, because when we're close, we can, one, see closer to the ground, which is important when you're trying to detect near ground circulations associated with tornadoes, and it improves our resolution. So the closer we are, we can actually see a finer scale picture of the atmospheric phenomena that we're sampling. Furthermore, when we have a stationary or fixed site instrument, we have problems such as beam blockage, which can come in the form of terrain features, sometimes buildings or trees. And we can, when we put this on a mobile platform, we can navigate around those issues and go directly to the source of what we're interested in collecting data on. So a fun little image here. I know you're not radar scientists, but on the left-hand side of this image, we have reflectivity, which is giving us the intensity of precipitation. And then this next one over is velocity, which shows us motion towards or away from the radar. This is imagery collected from the National Weather Service radar. We have a mobile version of that taken at the exact same time of the exact same storm. Again, reflectivity on the left-hand side, velocity on the right-hand side. And this just shows you how much more detail we can get from one of these mobile radars. So this is a zoom in basically of the square that's kind of outlined by the road network right there. So we can see things like these spiral bands. This is actually a tornado. So this is a radar image of a tornado. We see very strong detail or fine detail in the rotational fields. We even see some little banded structures in the upper right-hand side of this image that are a function of little boundary layer circulations that develop in the low levels of the atmosphere. So another kind of cool thing, we can actually watch tornadoes develop. We have a radar here. We have a leading edge of wind coming towards the radar. And as we move through, by the way, we do see road network here. So all of these little high reflectivity things, that's a road network, trees, buildings, etc. And we see the development of a tornado. So this is the kind of thing that we're wanting to do. Enter now what is now renamed lovingly Sparrow, which is the Skylar Phased Array Radar for high resolution observations of weather. We always like fun acronyms, right? I had a pretty cool version, mini version of this made by Raytheon, who is the orchestrator of the radar system. And then this is like the CAD version. So this is what the end result is sort of going to look like. Talking a little bit about the components and the integration here, as I mentioned, Raytheon's division of weather, which is Collins Aeronautics, they're building the radar system. So they're actually constructing the antenna from scratch. They're doing all of the modulation of the signal processing software. They are also developing a GUI to support real-time observations as we're out in the field collecting data. And they're taking care of the communications, the GPS coordination. Obviously, it's very important that we know exactly where we are in space. From a data analysis perspective, we're really interested in specific locations of all of these little individual components of our storm. So that's important. We have outsourced the component that causes the antenna to rotate. Now, I had talked a couple minutes ago saying that we don't need any rotation, and this is true, but we still need to be able to point the radar to a specific side of the truck and tell it where we want it to be looking into the atmosphere. Otherwise, if we're stuck in one position, then we have to physically move the truck, which when you're dealing with narrow roads in cow pastures and things like that, it's a little less desirable. And then here, enter CAR. So CAR is outfitting the truck, and they have been working with Ford, who graciously supplied us with a vehicle, which has been incredibly helpful for this project to move forward. So it's a Ford F550 chassis, and CAR is basically pulling together all of the hardware that's required to make this system work. We have a generator, we have to have onboard storage, we have to have an external AC that can be powered by the generator so we can physically shut the truck off, because sometimes we're collecting data for long periods of times, hours, sometimes depending on the mission. It can be longer than that if we're not doing tornadoes, for example, like tropical cyclones. We want to, not have the truck running that whole time, so we have this external AC. Also, equipment rack for the servers that are going to be doing all of the computational legwork, et cetera. And then we are outfitting, I say we, I'm not technically we, but David and his team back there are outfitting the interior of the cab to transition that into a mobile workspace. I have some basic specs of the radar here. I imagine nobody's really particularly interested in that, but it's a pretty cool thing. So ultimately, what will we be doing with this thing? I already have a project in place to go out to the LA San Diego area to take observations of heavy precipitation events as that precipitation is moving onshore from the ocean, specifically targeting regions that have been impacted by wildfires. So we're interested in heavy precipitation over those wildfire areas because those are prone to landslides. So the radar is going to be on site during these heavy rain events to act as an intermediary and provide advanced warning for the National Weather Service and other entities, water resources, et cetera, to have improved detection or prediction potential of landslides in this area. Obviously, tornadoes are my thing. So this spring, I'm going to be taking out not quite our instrument, but we're doing a proof of concept with a different instrument to look for the motion near the bottom of the tornado. This is an area that's very difficult to observe, which is part of the reason why tornadoes remain to be so difficult to predict and to quantify the intensity, because we just don't have good solid near ground observations. This radar is going to help provide us with a new look of those near ground winds. And then we're going to couple that with a really cool AI model that is using drone-based and stationary-based high-speed photography and videography to derive wind motion by actually tracking some of these like little cloud features that you can see in here. We can actually track those and come up with wind speeds and then assign that, kind of put that into the context of what the radar is seeing. So this is for tornadoes that are ongoing. We also are interested in looking at the process of forming tornadoes in the first place, because this still remains a little bit nebulous. So another portion of this project, not the same project, that other, this one is funded already through National Geographic. The other one we're pitching to NSF. But we have reason to believe that tornadoes form, or at least in some senses, form from almost random areas of rotation that are generated near the ground through turbulence. And when those areas of rotation kind of converge and amalgamate beneath a large vigorous thunderstorm, you can kind of spin those up into a tornado. This has been documented through numerical simulations, but we have been less successful in actually observing this in reality. So this project is now looking at the formation process, and in a similar way as the last one, we're taking the truck out, we're collecting data with the radar, and then we're simultaneously looking at how the visible photographs and video are showing us in things like wheat fields or in trees, where we might be seeing some of these turbulent circulations that ultimately might go together to produce the tornado that the radar can see. Another cool thing that I'm doing with OSU's Department of Physics is we are taking out what is called a muon detector. Muons are pretty cool physical particles. I'm not a particle physicist, but I have friends that are, and we are using this in the presence of severe storms to try to get at density variations that are induced in the storms themselves. We took that thing out, actually. This is a very crude instrument that detects muons, and we demonstrated proof of concept this past spring that we can actually do this, and that there are variations when you're looking at muons passing through a thunderstorm versus muons passing through the clear air. So our next phase forward is to develop a multidimensional array of these things and get more of a three-dimensional X-ray vision into storms to try to get at some of the answers in terms of how are the density perturbations in storms varying from storm to storm. We have no information about three-dimensionality in observed thunderstorms, both in terms of pressure, density, and temperature. So this is another cool thing. And then the radar obviously is going to be used to inform storm structure, rotational intensity, things along those lines. And then locally, we're going to be taking the radar out anytime there's severe weather in our region to support the National Weather Service in their forecasting operations and their predictability. So we have the capability to send images in real time over to the Weather Service, and we're going to do that to say, like, hey, we're on this storm. Our view is better than your view. This is what we're seeing. You may or you may not want to choose to issue a tornado warning, for example, on this storm that we're out looking at. Another really cool thing about this is going to involve a lot of students. So we have a support crew of students that are going to go into the field with this instrument as well, learn how to work it, learn how to collect the data, and ultimately learn how to be better scientists themselves. Another cool thing about this that's less my wheelhouse, but it is equipped with an aeronautic detector. So we can actually look at planes that are flying. We can see drones, larger ones and smaller ones. So I have a colleague who does aviation research, and we're going to take this radar out and look at what we can see. We can identify drones that are not supposed to be in the airspace, for example, and there's all kinds of other cool things that we can potentially do in the aviation world. So with that, I think I am done, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any, or we can talk offline.
Now, Georgia, with your other expertise, would the next step is to make this thing autonomous so you don't have students sucked up in tornadoes or whatever down the road? Oh, okay. I'm just thinking that should be a natural if you want to get closer to it than, other than your own daredevil activity, to have it. So, I mean, you have that expertise. That might be a way of doing it. Oh, okay. We'll see you in the next movie. So,
I contributed to that movie, by the way. Yeah, there is obviously some benefit to wanting to get as close as we possibly can. There's also a cost risk analysis that we have to consider because that instrument's like $1.75 million. So we don't want to just be sacrificing that. So I don't know, do we trust our autonomous vehicles enough to be able to make those kinds of decisions to run away from a tornado?
Really interesting thought, Gary. And I think one of the things that is defined in the SAE levels of automation from 0 to 5 is the definition of the operational design domain is really important. Where will this vehicle operate as an autonomous vehicle? And I think that in some of your circumstances, it may be totally possible to think about it level 4 thing. This vehicle specializes in chasing tornadoes in fields, for example. But hey, maybe there are further future opportunities.
Yeah, I can definitely see some collaborations in the making.
So a lot of the hurricanes and so on are tracked and looked at from above. So what is the difference that you find from tracking it from the ground or even the ability to try and track from above?
So hurricanes and tornadoes are two very different dynamical beasts in the atmosphere. We can see hurricanes very well from above through satellite imagery, right? And hurricanes have a very clear structure that we can we can see that structure through satellite-based imagery. The problem with tornadoes is you have 12 kilometers of thunderstorm above the tornado. So you really, there are individuals out there that are trying to get at satellite-based correlations with tornado production in these vigorous storms. But at the end of the line, it just comes down to the fact that we cannot differentiate a storm that produces a tornado from one that doesn't by looking from satellite imagery from above. Great question, though.
Thank you, Jana. And I'll just, I wanted to just simply say that we owe a great thank you to Ford Motor Company for providing the truck. That took some effort and some doing, but we made it work out, and that was an outstanding result. So, well, we leveraged the long-standing relationship with Ford Motor. So, wonderful. Thank you. And we are now ready to welcome our Senior Vice President for Research. And John, if you missed the tornado conversation with Jana, I don't know if you're familiar with her activities, but I have to give you this summary because you'll think it's cool. She works on chasing tornadoes with radars to understand that and many other aspects of weather. And she needed a little bit of help to equip her radar with sort of a truck underneath it. So we had a long conversation with Ford. They donated a truck that we can use for this program. And CAR see. So if you haven't met, this is worth a brief conversation because I knew you would understand it. And we're just being the low-level grease monkeys who put all the work, all the hardware together. So a great pleasure to introduce John Horak, our Senior Vice President for Research. As he will explain to you, he's relatively new in this position, but has done a lot of things.
Thanks, Giorgio. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I had a chance to have dinner with some of you last night. It's good to see you again. As Giorgio said, John Horak, guy from St. Louis. I'm a 10th year freshman at Ohio State. As I noted, I was in Huntsville. I was in Huntsville for 30 years, 17 of those at NASA, where I was a practicing astrophysicist, and then ran one of the 3 large groups at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. I left there to go be vice president for research at UA Huntsville, at the time the smallest R1. So we were like the Green Bay Packers, right? We're in the NFL, but we're in this tiny little city, which I don't know if sometimes that gets fruit thrown at me when I mention the Green Bay Packers. And then prior to coming here, I was vice president for space systems at Teledyne Brown Engineering, which is a publicly traded company under the Teledyne label. And among other things, my team that I led wrote the proposal to win and build the launch vehicle stage adapter, which was used last week on the SLS to get the astronauts up, and hopefully gravity will get them down. Gravity and a heat shield will get them down. So that's a little bit about my background. I was asked late last summer to start October 1 to be the vice president for research. And of course, when the provost calls and says, would you like to do this job? You already know what answer they're expecting you to give. And then you have to say, what do you mean by would I like to do this job? And then you have to have a reason to say yes. And so, the first part is a sort of obligation to the organization. If the organization calls and says, hey, Mark, I'd like you to consider doing this, and you work here, and you of course you consider it, and then you try to find a way to yes. But you have to have a motivation. And for me, research is the motivation. It's the very first link in the value chain of prosperity. We can play for returns on investment that are much longer than how many basis points are you going to add to earnings per share next quarter, Eric? Which was a game I played for 4.5 years, going out to Thousand Oaks every 90 days, take a beating, not a beating, but why you did great, do better, right? We play the long game. I have a slide that I didn't bring slides. I figured we just chat. But sometimes when I show a slide, I have a picture of Johannes Kepler and Albert Einstein. And Kepler, of course, is partly driving the ship today. He and Isaac Newton for the free return trajectory from the moon. But you can imagine Kepler as a researcher in his time, right? And he's thrilled. Like he doesn't have Twitter, but he would tweet, oh my gosh, I just discovered that the trajectories of planets are conic sections, and some are orbits that are bound and they're ellipses, and some are parabolas and they're just barely bound, and some are hyperbolas, and there are these rules, and I'm going to call them Kepler's laws, and the period squared is proportional to the cube of the semi-major axis, and planets sweep out equal areas in equal times. And I can imagine people looking at him saying, what are you doing? We're trying not to get the plague, right? What in the world are you doing? And yet at the same time, we look around, and as I said, it governs the motion of not just the natural things in the sky, but everything we put up there. GPS, the Hubble Space Telescope, the Compton Gamma Ray Observatory, the Artemis trajectory, it's all driven through this discovery. This is how we sail the seas of space. So that's what I mean by the long ROI. Einstein's the same way, right? So my grandparents were born in 1908. Actually, 3 of them 1908, 1 1910. So just shortly before they were born, there's a guy in the patent office, and he's a little nerdy, and he's got this really wild hairdo, and he's got his brain and a pen and a pad of paper. And he's like, I just don't think the world works the way we think it does. Speed of light is invariant, and there's this stuff called relativity, and there's special relativity, and then there's general relativity. And I know that probably 3 people in the world cared about it at the time. Did anybody use GPS today? If you did, please raise your hand. I'm not going to embarrass you. There's a lot of us that did it, okay? Today, and every time you open GPS, you're a commercial consumer of general relativity. Because one of the consequences of general relativity is the realization that the rate at which a clock ticks is a function of a couple things. There's no invariant time. Where is it in a gravity well? Depending on its position in a gravity well, there will be perceived differences in what is a second and how fast is it going. Same thing. And the key to GPS, as many of you probably know because you work on vehicles, is that you need to know what time it is. Well, the clocks are on a satellite and you're here. And so what do we mean by what time is it? So GPS signals have to have a general relativistic correction so that you don't land your plane, 10, 20 meters left of the runway. So the pizza delivery person brings it to your house and not mine. These are these kinds of ROIs that we see. And so, you probably experienced this too in terms of, long-term technology investments that you're making, long-term product lifecycle investments that you're making, trying to figure out, what is the future of the core technologies that drive our products? What will people buy? Because, Betamax was probably better than VHS, but nobody bought it. So, okay. So the technical solution doesn't always win. That's why we have Windows on our, sorry, anybody here from Microsoft? I'm sorry. I'm a Linux guy. So because I can hack the kernel, I use a Mac because I can get down to BSD. So it really is the first link in the value chain of prosperity. And you see what your industry, what transportation writ large, what mobility writ large means to the well-being, not just the gross domestic product, but to the well-being of every citizen in the country. So I drive a car. You might be surprised to know that. I actually have two cars. And they're both cars, okay? They're both cars. One is a 1954 Chevy Bel Air 4-door, 255 cubic inch, straight six, blue flame, 3 on the tree, and car. It's a car. It has 0 lines of software. Has 0 integrated circuits. It has a 6-volt power system. I don't drive it in the rain because the things called windshield wipers allegedly work by a vacuum pump on the carburetor, and that is just not good. So if it does rain, my windshield wiper is Rain-X and Velocity, and that takes the water off, but I don't drive it in the rain. It neither receives nor transmits any data because it doesn't have a radio, okay? It's a car. It's a car. My granddaughter's like, Papa John, that's your old car. I'm like, that's my old car. Clearly recognizable as a car. That's not the car that's in the lot. The car that's in the lot is a 2024 Volvo XC90. Satellite connectivity, Bluetooth connectivity, crash, crumple zones, airbags, digital displays, configurable, heated seats, heated steering wheel. Its native language is German because that's the only time I can practice my second language. And so ich bin ganz fluent in Autodeutsch. I can speak car German perfectly. Google, ich möchte nach Hause fahren. Gerne. In 20 Meter an der Ampel links biegen. Super ausgesagt. Ich möchte eine Nachricht nach Kati Horak senden. Right? I can talk to my car in German, which is crazy. I can't really, I curse at my other car. I talk to my Volvo, right? And I use them for different reasons, but they're both cars. And I think when I describe them as both cars, that is about where the similarity ends. Much of what I'm telling you, I hope you either know or internalize or believe. Like, yeah, okay, this guy's, he's saying stuff that we already know. But not everybody realizes that. And I am curious now today when I call something a car, I know what it means in the 1954 terminology. It's internal combustion engine, 1-barrel carburetor, evaporate the fuel. It's either fuel, air, or fire. Make sure you don't drop the transmission when you're trying to shift, and you can move molecules from point A to point B. Some of those molecules are my body. Some of it's somebody else. The seat belts I added, they were aftermarket. But we moved material back and forth, groceries, people, whatever. Today, yeah, I move a lot of material in my car, but I move a heck of a lot more data. I move a heck of a lot more data in and out. And so you ask questions about, well, it's a car, yes, but what does car mean? Is a car really a complex data input-output system with sensors and, that moves around on the surface of the earth? Is it less a transportation system for molecules and more an information system for digitization and data that helps you move those molecules around? I can't work on my Volvo. There's just no way. I can work on my Chevy, right? And yet I can tell you which one's more reliable. I've never had to leave my Volvo overnight at Sheetz and go in and say, I'll be back tomorrow and pick it up because I don't know why. I don't know why it won't start, right? And what's happened on the ground is now also happening through the air and through space, probably underwater. And so when we talk about cars and the Center for Automotive Research, yeah, Georgia, you're going to continue to do a ton of automotive research. Fast cars, electric cars, trucks, transmissions, tires, brakes, safety, sustainability, power systems that could range from internal combustion engines to hydrogen to electricity. Perfect. But there's another layer, another venture, another dimension that's coming. And maybe it's here already. You know, my wife's car is connected to Starlink. I'm thinking, 10 years ago, that wasn't even possible. There wasn't a such thing. What's coming tomorrow? This is why we're here, to figure out what's coming tomorrow. Society for me sometimes really runs out of airspeed and altitude and ideas, especially if you just watch the news and scroll your phone. It's just like, is this really the world we want? Definitely not the one I want to settle for. And I feel like we run out of airspeed and altitude and ideas. So where do we go? We all, human beings, as global citizens, which we could see from space, that everybody but 4 people in the world were in that picture. As members of our nation, as members of the state of Ohio, as members of Columbus, as members of our family or individuals, where do we go to get the airspeed and the altitude and ideas that are going to move us forward? For me, university research is where we go. It is the first link in the value chain of prosperity. We generate new knowledge and we share that new knowledge with everybody, but principally with young men and women who come in, experience their life here, either as an undergraduate or a graduate student. And then that knowledge goes out into the world and creates the positive social, economic, educational, and quality of life outcomes for everybody. And that's why it's fun to get together in meetings like this, because you get to talk about it. And not only do you get to talk about it, you get to do it. You get to do it. You get to create an electric vehicle that goes 350 miles an hour across the Bonneville Salt Flats, or goes 40 miles an hour, but it'll run for 6 weeks without a charge. I don't know what you guys are working on, right? But this is what excites me. And here, whether it's fundamental research into battery chemistry, how to test that, how do we integrate that in a vehicle? How do we take it out to the Transportation Research Center and drive it until it drops? This continuum of discovery, of inquiry, of not just asking why, but also asking why not. These 2 questions are super important. So that's why I'm here, why I'm happy to be here. That's why I'm happy you're here. And maybe I can just take some questions if you want. I could give you facts and figures. We do $1.67 billion a year in research expenditures, and there are 15 colleges and 3 gazillion research centers and whatever. I'm happy to do that too. There's got to be an Artemis question. I'm sure there is. Yeah, so I steward the whole research enterprise of the university. Okay, and as I said, it's almost 7,000 faculty members, and our research expenditures last year were 1.6 billion. That's a measure of how much money gets spent in pursuit of research. That's not how many contracts we won or were awarded. That's what went out the door. And so that's peeling off pictures of Ulysses S. Grant, more than 1 per second. $50 bill, $50 bill, $50 bill, 24/7, 365. And it spans the gamut from agriculture to architecture, astronomy, astrophysics, anesthesiology, and I'll get to the B's, C's, D's, and then I'll get to zoology, right? It's the whole shoot and match. We are, by measure, 12th in the country, period. Not 12th among publics, 12th in, between the Ohio River and Lake Erie, 12th. That's pretty good. That's ahead of Harvard, Yale, lots of others. We're number 6 in the country in terms of our work in research with industry. Okay. Now, research gets done primarily by faculty members, graduate students, undergrads, right? I do some, but I'm now an administrator. And so the enterprise for research, innovation, and knowledge, our job is to help fortify that, whether that's, Derek's single investigator grant in hyperfine transitions of strontium atoms in strong magnetic fields on Tuesdays in months that start with M in odd numbered years on cloudy days, very narrow focus thing, or whether that's a comprehensive integrated materials research community, Antonio's a part of that, where we figure out what can we do with stuff? What's it made out of? How do we join it together? What kind of stuff helps with this or that or the other thing? And so that's part of what we do. We steward that. So you write a research grant. We help you get that grant through the process. We help it get submitted. We make sure you don't take your grant and go buy a Ferrari and you actually spend it on what you're supposed to spend on. That doesn't happen here. I'm just saying we have a lot of regulations that we have to deal with. Okay. Second piece that is part of what we do is that we are the stewards of the innovation and technology transfer activities. And this is something that we're undergoing a lot of renovation right now. I was asked to rethink how we do this so that we are more lean forward. We are more investing as you might invest in a technology enterprise as opposed, I would say, in addition to having a portfolio of intellectual property. Peter, would you like to license this patent because I think it's really appropriate for what you want to do? You might say, yes, we can do that. That sort of transactional thing, but also to build companies, to build jobs, to build value and build equity, especially in Columbus and in Ohio and in the Midwest, but regardless of where those ideas go. So we win it. We help write proposals. We help put teams together, not just within Ohio State, but beyond. So Wolfgang Windel runs a space materials consortium for the Air Force Research Lab that includes us, Northwestern, University of Alabama, Huntsville, Penn State. We collaborate because we got a lot, but we don't have everything. And one of the things universities are really good at is putting teams together. So we win it, then we skin it. We actually do the research, generate the papers, the knowledge, the degrees, and then we spin it, turn it into the economy, make sure that our land grant mission is fulfilled and that the research we do generates the social and economic and educational and quality of life opportunities that matter for everybody. I'm a 1965 model human. I'm a Cardinal fan. What else do you want to know about me? I like waffles over pancakes. So ich spreche kein Deutsch. Ich übe Deutsch. Wie ein Arzt übt medicine. Sometimes the patient dies and I have to switch back to English. So it's just practice, like a doctor practices medicine. So vielen Dank. Yeah. Yeah, in my first hour, I'll answer that question in the thought. So let me just touch on Brazil. Okay. Ohio and Brazil share some things in common that are super important. One, Brazil has a very, very robust and strong aerospace industry. You've probably ridden on an Embraer aircraft as one example, right? And so do we. These two guys in Dayton invented an airplane. Jerry Mock from Columbus, first woman to fly solo around the world. We also have a very strong history and future in flight. And so with Kaya Shahin in the International Affairs Office, we continue to build those bridges with Brazil around aviation, training pilots, aerodynamics, research, structures for flight, and those kinds of things. Also, Brazil is a seriously important agricultural player globally for the growth of crops, for the raising of edible protein, and these kinds of things. You might have noticed if you drive through Ohio, so are we. There are a few farms around here, right? In fact, one right across the street. I had to figure out which way I'm pointing. And so our Food, Ag, and Environmental Science College and the work that we do in feeding the world is closely aligned and harmonizes greatly with the same kinds of interests that we have in Brazil. So those are two areas as one example where we work with them. Und natürlich haben wir vielen Austauschen mit Deutschland, zum Beispiel mit DLA und Universitäten und so weiter. It's a pleasure. Yeah, I can stick around for a few minutes. I'm happy to give you 10 digits in sequence. If it becomes useful to you, you need to write them down. 2, 5, 6, 6, 6, 5, 3, 3, 5, 6. That's my cell number. You can always text me if it's immediate or important. If you have a compliment for Georgia, please send it to me. If it's not immediate and it's not important, but it's funny, definitely send it to me. All right. So, vielen Dank. Ich freue mich über Ihr Besuch. Sehr angenehm und frohe Freitag. Okay. Back to you in the booth.
Thank you so much, John. Thanks for coming. Is something. Okay. Okay, so I'll explain very briefly what the rest of our plan is. Apparently, we're expecting for an arrival unknown to me. So you're not the only ones who will be surprised. But the situation here is that Jana gave her presentation earlier, which means that we have a little bit more slack in the afternoon, which means we can enjoy lunch a little bit more. So we won't be in a hurry to come back from lunch. And then after lunch, we'll have a series of very brief summaries of some new projects that are coming or that have made some good progress. We'll talk about some of these things, and we'll be closing at 2:30. Those of you who wish to come and take a peek at our facilities at CAR, we are wide open at 2:30. Raise your hand, David Emmerling. Raise your hand, David Cook. Yeah, Emmerling is right there. David Cook, he just spoke, you know who he is. So those two certainly are excellent reference points to have a nice tour of CAR afterwards. Since we are in this waiting mode, I don't know what's coming. Ekim had a conversation on topics related to bus safety with Wesley right here. Raise your hand, Ekim. The two of you should chat a little bit because the intersection safety challenge guru, the guy who actually really understands how it works, is right there. Yeah. And so the question is, we had a brief conversation. It turns out Dakota is doing some things on pedestrian detection with vision, et cetera, et cetera. So if we can make the case to then convince the FTA that we should be part of that plan. Yeah, right. Sorry, doing business in real time, but that's what we do. Yeah. Okay. So relax. I promise lunch won't go away and we won't be in a hurry. So ask a question, Antonio. Absolutely. You can have any of the things that are in here, they're wide open now. Yeah, yeah. If you were officially, I think you are officially registered to attend, right? Yeah, so that means if you got a sticker, then you'll receive them. Absolutely. And not only that, but any questions you want to ask, because one of the IUCRC, and Antonio's example is brilliant, was really understanding successful IUCRCs, what works, what doesn't, what works for us. We can continue to have that conversation. Yeah. Yeah. Continuous quality improvement, but this is at Ohio State, there are a number of these initiatives that bring multiple industry partners together. So the welding activities is one. We CAR have been doing it for a long time. The Gear Lab has been doing it for even longer. But there are other IUCRCs. I don't know what the count is, but we have a significant number at OSU. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. They, yeah, I mean, I did my job. We were on time according to the schedule. Yeah.
We have a special guest, but they were delayed in transit. Good.
Oh, okay, no, you say that because I'm not sure that.
No, it's perfectly fine. Sorry for the delay. We can break for lunch now. We will be making a special presentation or announcement during lunch, hopefully. But please feel free. The buffet is open. As you exit, it will be to your left-hand side. There's seating that you would have seen as you walked into the facility. There's signs on the tables that say reserved for an event. That's us. We're the event. It is nice outside, but it is quite windy, so at your own risk. But please enjoy lunch.
And I think we're ready to go again. And this afternoon, we're going to have a quick run through some of the new things that we're doing. Some of them are projects that have been approved and haven't started yet, and some others are things that we're actually in the process of doing. Some new exciting things. We have some great speakers, and I'll begin with Professor Kadir Ahmed and Dr. Ekim Yurtsever, who are going to talk to us about this US DOT Safe Streets for All program.
Thank you. I see my name for the last 1 hour and a half. I'm like, okay. Okay, so this is one of the new efforts. We heard good news in December that one of the projects under US Department of Transportation under Safe Streets for All that was selected. Hasn't been contracted yet, but we know some of the initial efforts that we will be looking into. And these efforts are being built on some of the sensing capabilities, compute capabilities that we have been practicing in other projects, for example, auto drive or intersection safety challenge with Ekim talk. So we built on the similar skill sets and went behind this program. Nick from ODOT made the connection. Fairlawn City was going behind this. So let me go to this program formally. So what is Safe Streets for All program? This program has been there for last 5 years. And the aim is to improve the roadway safety, prevent fatalities on the road, and essentially save the lives of pedestrians, cyclists, transit users, truck drivers, or all the humans or road users. City of Fairlawn was going behind this program, and they have a list of activities that you can see on the screen. Pedestrian safety, we have bus pull-offs, walkway improvements. So they're improving all the infrastructure in the red highlighted corridor, which is a 3.5-mile street. But they were looking for some digital infrastructure who can install the sensors, who can fuse them, interpret them wisely. So we were able to pitch in our ideas when Nick from ODOT made the connection that, yes, we have been doing multi-sense infusion. We have been playing with the AI edge computing. We have been part of these activities have been part of auto drive intersection safety challenge. So why don't we leverage a similar set of activities? So we know this is the intersection, the circled intersection that will be instrumented with number of sensors, including cameras, or we will do those sort of studies. What sensors are useful for essentially perceiving the environment and finding out what is the unsafe situations in the intersection. So to date, we know this piece. We don't know the bigger picture right now. So I think by the end of June or by next advisory meeting, we'll have more details on this. But again, we found some other nature of projects built on the skills that we have already. Now I think from here, Akim will take on, right? Which is again intersection safety challenge updates.
Yeah, I will go over ongoing, finished, and new projects briefly. But before that, I want to highlight the motivation again. So around we are losing 10,000 people in the US each year, and accidents at intersections are, the main reasons for this. The second thing that is important is incidents where we have vulnerable road user involvement. They are on the rise, right? So the technology is getting better, but somehow we have more pedestrians and cyclists getting involved in these, high risk, severe incidents. Some people explain this because of, maybe distraction and so on with the new transportation modes that we are using. And, because of this, DOT, everybody is very vigilant about it. And we have various projects going on, and a particular solution, a particular vertical that we are pursuing here at CAR is building a fully integrated intersection safety system, right? And we started with the design concept, and we won an award from DOT with our prototype. And then we actually implemented our system at a pilot intersection using data from a pilot intersection from Fairbank Research Center at DC, and won a second award, which is Intersection Safety Challenge 1B. Those are our completed awards. And then we have one ongoing award coming from OSU Accelerator Award. And the main idea here is to explore potential for deploying this prototype, not in a sense where we will completely deploy a full sensor suite, a new sensor suite. Rather, can we use already existing smart ready intersections? And we partnered up with City of Dublin. City of Dublin, we are very, very thankful. They agreed to share some data with us coming from their Bosch sensor suite. And we are currently using that data, and we are refining our software so we can actually use data coming from these smart ready intersections, which are mostly developed for traffic flow monitoring purposes, and see if we can find a second use for them. And Kadir mentioned the US DOT Safe Streets project. This project will be built on top of these both prongs, if you will, right? Like we have the concept, we tested it with data coming from a pilot intersection, and then we are building further experience, being able to use already existing sensor suite information. And finally, we will turn this into a full deployment at City of Fair Lawn. I'll just briefly show the technology. This is from Fairbank Research Center. Here you will see a cyclist dummy on the top left. You see the dummy is crossing, a pedestrian. And then this is an actual collision. And if you look at the right-hand side, we were able to predict that before happening using real data. Now, of course, why we need to have a pilot intersection and we need to have the dummies for this. Obviously we cannot hit real humans, but we did actually validated our prototype system with real world data. And the next step is to deploy it in not these controlled environments, but real city life. And the current progress. So this is how the data, from City of Dublin looks like. So in our prototype solution, we built the whole stack from the ground using role sensor information and doing object detection and tracking. The idea that we are exploring with City of Dublin is, can we use, for example, already existing solutions that provide us with object detection and tracking data, such as you can see here, this car is tracked, the pedestrian is tracked, and then refine our software stack so we can consume this information and focus on conflict detection and severity classification. So that is the progress with the OSU Accelerator Reward. And Kadir introduced the Fairlawn project, but we will have two main goals with this new project. One, this time we will instrument the whole intersection from ground up, and we will use additional sensors such as LiDAR, and we will deploy it and observe the performance over a period of time. And we also want to deploy a very high-level simulated dashboard idea, so we can see how timely these warnings are. That's it for intersection safety. All right. Apparently two. One more. All righty. Okay, if no other questions, Kadir is back.
No questions, then I'll move with the next project. So this is one of the DOE projects by the Vehicle Technology Office, which survived. Rest of the projects were terminated or shut down because of the electrification flavor in it. So this is optimized low carbon fuel range extender. I don't know why it's called HYREX, but but I'm assuming there is some abbreviation. I think high power range extender for X applications. So that's the intent behind this. So this project is funded by DOE. Cummins is the lead. We are the academic partners in it. John Dixon and Nitish were leading. Hind, she's the graduate student sitting at the back. She has been of great help on this project. Then Scott Shear from Ag Engineering Department was also part of this effort. We'll see how he helped. Along with other partners, we were primarily interacting with the Cummins team on this. And the goal was to look at the off-highway electrification potential. They constitute around 18% of the total US total production, with 9% on the agriculture and other off-road segments. And there is a potential of saving $430 million, or 430 million barrels of oil. And working with Cummins gave us the luxury of this can go into multiple applications. For example, construction, mining, agriculture. We are looking into agricultural application, but others will be are also on the horizon. It was an engine-centric effort. The green blocks where we were able to contribute, for example, optimize the hybrid or engine operating points, then idle reduction, energy management strategy. That was core of our effort. Then how do we recover the energy? And the goal was to find out which are the target applications in off-road. They call that off-road has a long tail edge set of application, meaning that there's a lot of variety of off-highway application with very low volume of the production. So where does this electrification fit? So low power applications are BEV favorable. High power may not be electrified, they're not good as for the electrification, but they can be a good case study for the range extended application. This is what we were exploring in the project also. And some of the applications, like in this case, they are listed here, but we were looking into the ag tractor, high power ag tractor. This is one of the, not the actual truck, but that represents the high power ag tractor. So standard 6 steps that we followed. How do we select the powertrain? How do we model it? How do we select the right component sizes? Then gather duty cycles. Gathering duty cycles in off-road is not easy because there's a lot of variety of application. So we were able to collaborate with the ag engineering to get the duty cycles. And then we did some TCO analysis also. This is the field data that we were able to collect, working with Scott Shear from the ag engineering department. We had some tractors instrumented. We were able to gather some duty cycles. and use them for our modeling and control and energy management strategies. Now, how this powertrain is different? Definitely, the terrain properties are much more in variety. We have gradients, we have soil types, all they come into the picture. Then on the auxiliary load or the implement load side, yes, traction load is there, but a lot of power goes into the implement. So because of these terrain properties and the implement varieties, we need to have different duty cycles as compared to the on-road duty cycles. So collecting those duty cycle was a task on its own. So the optimization or the EMS energy management strategy goals remain the same: minimize the TCO, maximize the fuel reduction. How do we collect the duty cycles? And this was the engine and battery size that we were playing with. Looked into powertrain controls. Actually, what will go into the tractor, or if it's realized, it will be rule-based. But we looked into the dynamic programming, some of the learning-based controls. And the intent was what dynamic programming is giving us as a benchmark solution, how we can realize it for some real-time implementable controls using learning-based controls. So we looked into the reinforcement framework. So because we were able to access the field data, so we were able to capture the variation or the uncertainties that are not modeled. And then we were able to deploy on the tractor model and then verify, are we able to meet those requirements by meeting the powertrain limits? This is a busy slide, but I think the message that I want to give over here is, after all doing the simulations and the deep analysis, fuel reduction numbers as compared to conventional, you can see on the slide. And when we looked into the reinforcement-based solutions, we were within 97% of the dynamic programming solution. That was giving us some confidence that even if it's an unseen duty cycle for the reinforcement learning algorithm, for a DP-based benchmark solution, we are pretty close to DP in terms of the fuel economy numbers. And when we compare to the rule-based, which is widely used, but not easy to adapt to all operating conditions, so we were within 7% in improvement of the fuel consumption. So this is again using some of the state-of-the-art algorithms where we can match DP performance while managing the online implementation capability. Looking into the TCO, total cost of ownership, payback time. The way tractors are used in Midwest, 450 to 800 hours in a whole year, that brings in the payback time of 76 years. Like, nobody will keep the tractor this much long, right? So how we can make it feasible, right? So what we are trying to find out, what are the cases where these tractors or these off-road applications can make more sense? So one is, can we operate more than 810 hours per year? Only then the payback time comes around 20 years, which is the typical tractor life. The other case that we were looking is, if we can bring down, operating hours remain the same, but if the battery price comes down from 300 per kilowatt hour to 150 kilowatt hour, that makes another case that the return or payback time is on top of the conventional tractor price. It adds 2 years additional payback time, meaning that if the battery price comes down this, we have better chances. That's one aspect. The other aspect is how we can find more applications for the same tractor, for the same ACT tractor, so that it can operate around thousands of hours. So one application was scrapping, or where these tractors can be used when they are not being used for the ag application, or go to the south where the agricultural activity happens throughout the year, unlike in the cold areas. So we are trying to find where the electrification in off-road makes sense, number one. And number two, what are the duty cycles, or where are the applications where the return of investment makes more sense, so that these electrification solutions can be deployed for those particular applications. We are towards the tail end. We have 2 more months left on this project, then we'll conclude this, and we'll see how to leverage more on this. Yeah. Yeah, so this was, I don't know, two months back? 2 months back analysis. Yeah, so things change in the last month. So we need to update these numbers. Yeah. Yeah. So this was the progress on this off-highway electrification project. Yeah. Any questions? How we are calculating? So for example, battery price, yes, maintenance, total, the upfront, then operational cost, then few of other things that are not mentioned here that are in, we are looking into it. If you play with the C rate of the battery, if we don't offer high C rates, can we lower down the battery price? So we are going into those much details to calculate this TCO. There is one battery change, right? 4 batteries? Yeah, so 4 swaps are there. Yeah. So again, the off-road operating conditions offer different set of questions that we have to look into to get the answer. Any other question before we move on? Okay, thank you.
Just to show you how diverse we are, we're going to go from a farm field to the blue skies. And the next presentation is on a topic that involves, in fact, we have the pleasure of having Professor Zach Cassis, who's an expert in navigation and related topics, and Professor Matt McCrink, who's an expert in making things fly, and he needs navigation support, right? So. We need to replace here the. Beautiful. Yours, sir. Spot.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I hope my presentation will be a little lighter than everything before that. I think it's the last one, right? You will close the event. But first of all, big congratulations to Giorgio. I just learned about this wonderful news. So very well deserved, Giorgio. Okay, so I always like to start by thanking my students, current and past, for what you are about to see, because I personally think it is absolutely beautiful. But before I show you the beautiful stuff, I mean, we take GPS for granted, and I just want to scare you a little bit. It is Friday. It's not Friday the 13th, but I just want you to reflect a little bit about things you take for granted, one of which is GPS. And I don't know how much you know about GPS and how much we depend on it, but I put this presentation together recently for another talk, and I thought maybe I should, get more mileage on that presentation. So bear with me. How does a world without GPS look like? It could start with some minor nuisances, right? You cannot find the coffee shop, right, in a new city. The Uber driver cannot find you. You cannot find the exit on a freeway. But things would quickly start escalating. You are more of an, vehicle folks. So airports will get into disarray. There will be chaos in the seas, and emergency responders cannot find where the fire is or where the trapped person is to rescue them. And of course, we are moving towards autonomous vehicles. So those will suffer a lot, from self-driving cars crashing into each other, to drones coming down from the sky, to tractors. Talking of tractors, really, today, John Deere manufactures the most autonomous vehicles in the whole world, and they depend on decimeter level accuracy from GPS. And they are autonomous, so we don't have GPS, things like this or even worse could start happening. So you may wonder why we may not have GPS. The obvious reason is war zones. And it started, this is something known in the navigation community for more than 2 decades. But unfortunately, finally, it started claiming lives. So there was the incident where the Russians shut down an Azerbaijani airlines about a year ago and killed people. Why? There was interference. The airline or the plane got into the wrong airspace. It didn't know where it was. The Russians took it down. And then you have probably heard enough about the Strait of Hormuz in the news. While oil tankers are colliding at the Strait of Hormuz because of interference with GPS. And for my European friends, no one is safe. Even your chief, the EU chief, had to undergo emergency landing in Bulgaria because suspectedly the Russians hit her plane with GPS interference. Terrorism is another reason why this could happen, and it already had happened in India. And organized crime, of course, saw this as an opportunity, from truck hacking to drug smuggling and trafficking by the US-Mexico border. They're already exploiting this vulnerability. And finally, illegal fishing and sea activity is taking advantage of this in the seas. Or it could simply be unintentional. And I think that's one of the scariest things, because there were 2 incidents, 2 very famous ones. One in Newark Liberty International Airport. A truck driver bought one of those jammers. You can buy them for $30 online. They're called personal privacy devices. It will not allow anyone to track you anymore because it jams GPS. But it will not, the air is connected. It will jam GPS not only around your bubble, but it could extend for miles. So he was driving every morning on the freeway by Newark Liberty International Airport, and he, I think, was escaping from his boss who was trying to track, his truck, while he was causing disruption in the airport, which is pretty serious. And then it also happened in Denver, where they had to shut down runways and divert planes for more than a day because of this. So what I do in my lab is coming up with alternatives to GPS so that when the plane crashes, it could avert a crash by simply looking at the stars. And those are the thousands of low Earth orbit satellites that have been deployed and continue to be deployed as we speak. This is as of April of this year, how many low Earth orbit satellites are in space. Starlink is the granddaddy of all, more than 10,000 satellites. OneWeb is a European constellation, 650. Amazon, of course, Bezos decided to go head and head, and he's planning about 4,500 satellites. China is planning 2 Starlink equivalent constellations. So it's, lots and lots of activity in space is happening as we speak. So why are these satellites, I think, will be the future of navigation systems? Well, first of all, is abundance. In 2019, there were 2,400 satellites in low Earth orbit. GNSS, so GPS is the American version of GNSS. GNSS is Global Navigation Satellite Systems. European built an equivalent to GPS called Galileo. The Russians have an equivalent called GLONASS, and the Chinese have an equivalent called Beidou. If you add all of their satellites up, they are 84. LEO by itself is 2,400 in 2019. In 2026, LEO went up to 11,000, and in 2029, they're expecting it to be 60,000, whereas GNSS is pretty stable in number. High signal power, so you have satellites that are more than 20 times closer to Earth. So you're going to get signals that are 1,000 times more powerful. So messing with those signals becomes harder. Spectral diversity, all of GPS and its sisters transmit in a small sliver of the spectrum called the L-band, whereas these mega constellations in low Earth orbit transmit in a much larger swath. So you can take one, you can jump on another spectrum and use it. And finally, they are free to use. If you know how to use them, and that's what I will show you, you will get some really nice results. But even though they are free to use, there is no free lunch, right? Except if you come to the advisory board, then you will get your free lunch. So that is why I think it's a very beautiful field for my students and I to explore these research questions. What do they transmit? You will have to figure that out. These are proprietary signals. Timing error, we have to figure that out. GPS tells you both what they transmit and the timing error. Atmospheric errors, you will have to figure that out. And very importantly, large ephemeris error. Where is the satellite in space? Starlink and all these operators know where it is. We don't, as civilians. The best public knowledge is kilometers in error. So you will have to come up with estimation approaches and closed loop tracking and very, standard things that we had done in other fields, bring it to this new emerging field. So, what we've been doing is we don't worry about satellites. I don't have the capability to launch satellites, but I can drink their milkshake, right? So I will let them launch satellites, but I will develop receivers and put them on planes and cars and drones and so forth and use their signals. And I'll develop a ground segment that monitors the satellites and share data with users so they can navigate. I'll not go through the technical details, but we came up with theory that we turned anything transmitting from space to be like a pulsar, to be like a lighthouse in space, right? So basically, the theory that we came up with is how can we learn the signal that they're transmitting on the fly, decipher it, and ultimately navigate with it. Okay, so that was the topic of my most recent PhD student, and he managed to decipher signals coming from NOAA, Orbcom, Iridium, Starlink, and OneWeb, different constellations. Okay, and then for the other one, just to show some math here, but I'm not going to go through the equations. This is how we would learn their timing and spatial error, right? We understand their orbital mechanics very well, and we start tracking, states, and I will not bore you with the details. It's Friday and it is afternoon. Okay, but anyway, it does exist, as Georgia said. But what I will show you is what we can do with this, right? So this work, if you had checked, Ohio State's main page was on the main page in January and also featured in IEEE Spectrum. So let me show you real quick. This is an experiment we did here in Columbus, not too far from Carr. Those are the antennas that we equip the vehicle with. The idea is let's simulate a GPS cutoff. So the vehicle is navigating on the freeway. It's using GPS. World is beautiful. What if you lose GPS? So during the period of GPS availability, we are listening to signals coming from Starlink, OneWeb, Orbcom, Iridium. These are different satellite constellations. We are applying all of our techniques, learning their signals, correcting their timing error, spatial error, and so forth. When you lose GPS, and red is what your vehicle will experience. It will start drifting away and it will not know where it is. Whereas in green is what we are able to produce by listening to these satellite constellations. Okay? Also, we focused a lot on Starlink in my lab because, as I said, this is the granddaddy. They have 10,000 satellites. What if we want to just use Starlink without anything else? It's cheaper in terms of components. You don't have to have many antennas and so forth. What can you do? And we managed to, decipher the entire Starlink signal. The synchronization, not the data. Don't worry, I can't listen to to your communication or what YouTube video you are downloading. But I can listen to their synchronization signals, which are enough for me to navigate. Okay, and then there are benefits for this. We can get nanosecond level timing precision from their signal. We can get Hertz level Doppler tracking, and we can get, it's very powerful signal. So to show you how powerful it is, we combined all of our work with Starlink into one video. And this was shown on the covers of Inside GNSS and GPS World magazines. So let me just end by showing you the first work that exploits Starlink across land, air, the stratosphere, and the Arctic Sea. I'm going to navigate across the US and in Greenland with Starlink alone. So first, Pittsburgh. So this is the ground vehicle from Carr that we drove to Pittsburgh. We set up in the electroscience lab in Ohio State a reference station that's listening to Starlink and transmitting corrections to the vehicle that's navigating in Pittsburgh. And green is what we are able to estimate just with Starlink signals, whereas in red, this is a $15,000 navigation system that uses an IMU and GPS And despite that, if you lose GPS, it will drift away, whereas you can see 650 meters in error down to 8 meters. And this is pretty hard because you're using signals that are not intended for navigation. You don't know what the signal is like, and you don't know where the satellites are. Second up is we did that on a drone. So we set up also our base reference station in ESL. This is the shoe, not too far from the shoe. We flew this drone last summer in Tuttle Park, and you can see very cheap commercial off-the-shelf hardware. All of really the muscle is in the algorithms that are living there. Somehow an RC car decided to intrude as the vehicle was taking off, but it was too late. We had taken off. Once again, this is not a cheap IMU. This is a $15,000 device that we bought. But if it loses GPS, it will not be meter level or decimeter level, which is what they promise. It will start accumulating these errors. So over half a kilometer, 42 meters, we are down to 8 meters. Next up, we decided, okay, let's go even higher. So let's go as high as Icarus. Icarus, if you are Greek or Greek mythology, he wanted to fly too high. So this was really an undergraduate project to build us a payload that can sustain this crazy altitude, which we wanted to go nearly 100,000 feet. So we put Brutus to bless the payload. We did the OHIO with the balloon. The balloon was the O because there were only 3 Buckeyes. And ultimately, we're going to fly as high as we can, right, uncontrolled. We did hit 83,128 feet. That's more than twice the altitude of commercial airlines. Popped the balloon, recovered it. Thankfully, it was in one piece. We had to fight Bevo along the way from UT. That's UT's mascot. But we did recover it. And you can see here, if you are flying at this altitude and you lose GPS, so you have your altimeter is your only hope. That's in red, whereas in green, we are using Starlink signals to navigate this balloon. The last thing is Greenland was a lot in the news. We decided, you know what? Let's go join the party and head to Greenland and see what's happening there in case we need to navigate without GPS. So first of all, we had to send Brutus to check it out for us. So that's Brutus in Greenland. We asked the team that drove this vessel or sailed in this vessel, didn't drive, to do the OHIO. And then here I'm going to use some footage from a movie that's called Adrift, just to show you how scary it is if you lose GPS there. So this is our collaborator pretending, oh, GPS is acting weird. Would everything be okay? So now this is from the movie. This didn't happen to him. We did not hurt anyone in the making of this research. So she's saying, should I be worried? They got hit by a storm and they're sailing in the middle of the sea. What if GPS becomes unreliable? It is a storm. It's a cyber storm, right? So you really don't want to get lost in the Arctic without GPS. Thankfully, she had our hardware. And it happens, to our surprise, Starlink and OneWeb were transmitting there, even though I don't think there are that many people. And that was enough to allow us to navigate, you see in green, follow how the boat is navigating, compared to red is what you get. Over 8 kilometers, you would be away by a kilometer. You would be lost by a kilometer, whereas we were only lost by 27 meters. So that, in maritime, 27 meters is great news. So in closing, I hope you will not see a world like this. I know this is all too dramatic, thanks to Copilot but really, things, we depend on GPS with our lives. And as we get these tractors, drones, self-driving cars, things could get very bad if someone does something to it. Hopefully you will see something like this. You're not even looking, the car is driving itself, but suddenly GPS disappears and you will not even care, because Leo will be there to rescue you, and you wouldn't even pay attention, just like you don't pay attention to GPS. So with that, I thank all of the different funding organizations that funded this work, and I will transition to something I did hint to last time we were here, which is we did receive about $1 million from NASA through congressional earmark to basically take what I had shown you on a plane. The idea is, can we do this on a real plane? So I will let Matt here come to the stage, because we bought a plane, and that's a picture. and he will tell us how he is preparing it for takeoff.
Thank you, Zach. Hi, Matt McCrank from the slight rearrangement of the CAR acronym. So I'm from the ARC, the Aerospace Research Center, and we're at the OSU airport. So my background and my lab is really focused on what we call fundamental to flight test. And so this has been an excellent and wonderful partnership with Zach to be able to essentially transition this research into an operationally relevant environment through the miracle of flight test. And so what we've done as part of this congressional write-in is we identified an aircraft that we thought was going to be the best representation of an operationally relevant platform that we can integrate into the airspace. And so a lot of the work that we do is in partnership with the FAA. I don't know how many of you have, this is always kind of fun, how many of you have actually flown a drone before? See? Non-zero number, non-zero number, right? And it's becoming more and more prevalent. I guarantee if you ask my students, every single one of them has flown drones before. And as per the latest data that's actually come out of the FAA, there are about, depending on how you count, about at least a single or two orders of magnitude more drones registered than there are actual crewed aircraft in the airspace right now. Right. And so we have a substantial number of these vehicles that are going to be integrated and actually used in the airspace. And the FAA's entire plan of how to essentially keep us safe while we fly is relying upon GPS right now, right? That is the sole mitigation strategy for essentially keeping aircraft away from each other operating in the airspace. And so I think as Zach pointed out, there are some obvious sort of problems with that being a sole source of mitigation. And so we're really excited to essentially go through this research and use this as a new tool to understand what we can do to essentially provide greater access to the airspace while ensuring the same equivalent level of safety of what we have right now, right, that we all rely upon when we fly. And so the aircraft that we identified and purchased is a Cessna 210L. So it's an aircraft that, again, can reach sort of the performance speeds and operational envelope of what we would see from both the civilian population, Group 4 UAS, all the way up to sort of the smaller private jets and other such things. So it's a relatively fast aircraft, can operate at a very high altitude. And so we are going through the process right now of retrofitting this vehicle to incorporate this new LEO-based navigation system into the aircraft. And so these are some gratuitous pictures of sort of where we are right now. This is a full rebuild retrofit of the aircraft. It's been completely torn apart down to the nuts and bolts and studs and is being rebuilt primarily for demonstrating this new navigation system and capability. In addition to this, we're also doing aerospace-centric work on it, looking at essentially adding increased autonomy capabilities to these vehicles and using it as an autonomous demonstration platform that is going to be representative of the next generation of aircraft that are going to be flying in the airspace, which we are sort of dubbed advanced air mobility or urban air mobility vehicles. And so we're working in partnership. We have a close relationship with Garmin and other sort of manufacturers that are going to sort of help us integrate some of these advanced techniques for navigation and safely navigating the airspace into the vehicle. And then in addition to this, my background primarily is in sort of the aerodynamic aspects of these, or dealing with some of the interplay between autonomy and the aerodynamic nature of these vehicles. And so we also intend to use this for as really sort of a cornerstone of our research moving forward for the next few years, right? So it's going to give us the capability to look at different ways of essentially improving vehicle aerodynamics, reducing fuel burn, improving efficiencies, and other such things that are going to be really important for the next generation of aerospace vehicles. And so with that, I guess we can open it up if there are any questions. Perfect. Yes. Yeah, hours. There we go. Hey, all right. How about that?
Accuracy down to more than what I showed. It depends where you want to invest. You can invest in better inertial measurement units. You can really, what we are showing here is as difficult as it gets, where not so expensive hardware, nothing is optimized. It is really prototypes. Our studies expect you can get down to GPS-like performance. If you can invest in stations and reference nodes, so if you are familiar with RTK, if you can build those, you can actually get down to GPS-like accuracy. And the nice thing about what we are doing compared to traditional RTK usually, you're like 20 kilometers is where you should be from the reference node because the errors, if you are further, you're not going to get better. We sent corrections from Columbus to Pittsburgh. That's 250 kilometers away and still managed to navigate down to about 8 meters. If you have a reference that's closer to you or multiple references, then you can get much, much better. Yeah. So it depends how much money you are willing to put on the table. Yeah, well, I'm very familiar with what they are trying to do. It's not done deal yet. In fact, I have briefed the FCC commissioner multiple times about and Department of Transportation about what is realistic, what you can do. I don't have a dog in the fight, as they say. I'm not a company. There is a lot of money to be made for these backups. LEO is exciting because of the sheer number of satellites that are being deployed. But I'm worried that it's really becoming very cheap, relatively cheap to launch a constellation. And every time you hear a new constellation is getting born, which actually is not really very good news. There is spectrum issues, and then there is space debris, which actually could ruin it for all of us if things start happening. They call it the Kessler syndrome. Terrestrial is great as long as it is not one of those companies that are trying to make a buck of it and control navigation for everyone. And there are companies that are really pushing for that. Once they get hold of that spectrum, yanking that away becomes very, very hard. What we had done before, I have presented in past car external advisory boards, was we had navigated with cell phone signals. So I like to repurpose. I like more the green approach, if you will. If you have something, why don't we repurpose it? Why don't we repurpose the cellular infrastructure? It's built, it's transmitting, and we navigated. Actually, the reason we got this, one of the big reasons why we got this aircraft, besides the wonderful support from Carr, from David and Giorgio and their team, was we flew with US Air Force on their plane and showed that you can get down to meter level accuracy high up, not super, up to 23,000 feet with cell phone alone, with cell phone signals. It's crazy, right? So I think, everyone is trying to claim the next solution because you cannot fix GPS. It's limited by the physics.
Aviation, it needs to be broadly available. It needs to be broadly available for aviation, right? And there's a guaranteed uptime and availability associated with that you have to maintain to rely on it for navigation purposes too.
Excellent. I think we're going to go back down to earth now. And I can just do share, right? This one. Yeah, got it. Okay. So one last little bit, and this time you'll have to tolerate me for a few more minutes. We have been doing some work, so we're going from airplanes and other flying objects back to Earth. And most of what we're talking about is going to be focused on transit buses. And I'm really happy that our friend Wesley Oliver is here with us, Director of Engineering at CODA, because we've been able to take advantage of some information that CODA made available to us. And we have about 10 minutes. I'll be pretty concise in all this, but I'm going to explain something that it's useful to anyone who's thinking about fleets of vehicles. So we've done two things in this project. First of all, the motivation is battery electric buses, but we would not be afraid of thinking, for example, of fleets of small agricultural tractors for working in a vineyard, for example. And the question is, there's been a lot of focus in the transit industry on deploying battery-powered solutions. Frankly, battery electric propulsion makes a lot of sense in an urban setting with transit buses. But this brings up a lot of questions. You have, first of all, operations under different ambient conditions in different parts of the country. Charging, how do you plan for your charging? And all of these, and duty cycles that are dramatically different from one city to another, from one route to another in the same city. So the question is, how do you deal with the battery state of health? And part of this is a challenge. You know, the question that was raised earlier, Kadir's PhD student was saying, oh, we assume that the battery gets replaced every 5 years. Well, in the world of transit buses, when FTA provides some cost share to the transit agency to purchase a battery electric bus, the typical strategy would be something like, the cost of a bus includes a battery replacement at 6 years because the bus has to be certified for 12 years. They need to live 12 years. So at 6, you change the battery. Do the transit agencies know for sure that the battery will last 6 years? Allow me to smile. I don't think they know. Also, is the Duluth, Minnesota Transit Agency have the same issues as the Mojave Desert or Death Valley Transit Agency? Probably not. So there are all these questions about battery lifespan variability and lack of operational feedback. What do you do? Even if the BMS that is provides you with a signal that says battery state of health, and you believe that that is true, how do you know how that's going to evolve in the future? And of course, any mistake that you make with a battery pack life is an expensive mistake. So our goal was to develop a software tool that would help fleet operators perform data analytics on data that is available from buses. And primarily, you can do other things with this information, but the primary goal initially was to monitor the state of health of the battery and predict what we call its remaining useful life. And knowing this and knowing the evolution of the state of health, you can imagine that one could do a number of useful things, such as, for example, reassign the deployment of different buses on different routes to try to even out the loading on these vehicles. Let me give you a number too, that these are rough numbers. Wesley can probably tell you the exact numbers, but CODA operates about 400 buses and about 50 of those are battery electric. There are transit agencies that are already at 100% battery electric. So we did a lot of work. I'll move a little bit faster through these things, but I want to show you some key elements. Here you go. We had access to data collected through a telematics interface on batteries, on battery electric buses between 21 and 25. And altogether, we had about 1.2 million kilometers of data. This is a pretty significant amount of information. And these are all New Flyer XE40 buses. So while they're not exactly identical, they are more or less the same kind of battery. They're perhaps different battery pack capacity. And so we developed a methodology for carefully identifying the data and matching it to what the bus was doing at that specific time. Was it in the depot being charged? Was it actually deployed on its route doing its job? Was it returning to base? And so we also looked, and I found this to be fascinating. Good job, done by the BMS people and the battery system integrator, because those are the fluctuations in ambient temperature in blue, and in red you have the fluctuations in the battery pack temperatures. So that's interesting. Good job of trying to preserve the battery in a reasonable temperature range. So other things, aggregated metrics that come out of all this data we had. What is, for example, the impact of ambient temperature on power consumption of the auxiliary and net energy consumption of the buses? Remember that those points that you're looking at there, that's tens of thousands of data points. And also understanding high voltage loads versus low voltage loads versus the heater. The heater energy consumption is a big deal in winter, right? It's pretty clear. And so we understood this data, and I will make a big jump forward now and simply say that understanding the operating environment, the geographical coordinates of all the bus stops for all the routes that CODA runs, we understood how we developed a digital twin that models geographical elevation and also the plane geography, street coordinates and all that, ambient temperatures, and incorporates all of these things together with the routes that the transit agency runs. And the digital twin is developed in such a way that if you asked us, Ani is not here, so I can't volunteer him to tell you how long it would take him. But if you said, oh, look, I would like to do this for a transit agency in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Well, we know how to translate this digital twin to represent the operation in a completely different city with completely different geography, elevation, and climate. And so the end result was that we spent a little bit of time. There are lots of details of how we did this, but basically this digital twin collects route and weather information. We have a high fidelity powertrain system model. We incorporated a driver model because, as the transit agency folks know extremely well, how the driver drives makes a difference. The driving style is a huge differentiator. And also passenger load. At different times of day, the same route, the same line may have completely different passenger loads. So you have a variability in the mass the bus transports that is significant, and auxiliary power consumption, which is seasonal, is very much climate dependent. So we developed a huge amount of data using the Ohio Supercomputer Center. By the way, this is the kind of thing that we do extremely well. At the moment, I think I'm the primary name on something like 6 or 7 different Ohio Supercomputer Center projects in which we're using high performance computing to solve all kinds of problems. And what I wanted to show you here is that this digital twin did extremely well in mapping these things, and I'll show you how well in a moment. And we're able to understand and characterize for a given route on a given day of the year where the energy goes. By the way, for the car company guys, you'd be stunned at how much braking regen these buses do. It actually surprised me. At first I said, when the guys came back to me and showed me the answers, that nah, there is no way they can regenerate such a high percentage of the braking energy. Well, they do, and they can do it even though the vehicle is rear wheel drive, because the design of the braking regen is focused on a lot of rear braking, something that really you wouldn't do in a passenger car. It does not satisfy our idea of vehicle dynamics and performance. My 50-50 weight distribution car, I wouldn't brake like that, okay? I would not like it. But in a big heavy bus that goes mostly at moderate speeds, it works, and they regen an incredible amount of energy. So here, what you're going to see now, it's a flash of thousands and thousands and thousands of data points, where blue is our supercomputer simulations of exactly the routes on which we had data for the CODA buses. And over and over again, this is power consumption versus ambient temperature. And so there you go. That's sort of an aggregate of all that information. This is specific energy as a function of temperature. Energy regenerated as a function of ambient temperature. Energy regenerated as a function of bus speed, so you can understand. My point is, as you look side by side at these things, the matching between what the digital twin predicts and what the data that CODA collected tells us is extremely good. So with this, we are now in the process. Oh, and these are the effects of the driver. And sure enough, we characterize drivers. We have a bit of experience with our Borg-Warner friends, driver modeling. Remember, we spent a little bit of time doing that. We adapted it to bus drivers and to buses. There's some differences, okay? But fundamentally, the difference between a calm, normal, and aggressive driver is significant in terms of energy consumption, meaningful, measurable. And so the end result of this is that we are in the process of fine-tuning a web app that is capable of performing driver behavior analysis. We can tell CODA operations people whether there are certain drivers that may tend to perhaps use more energy than others because of their driving style. We are trying to understand the impact of different environmental factors and predict basically what's left in the life of this battery pack. And when we met the new chief operating officer of CODA for the first time a few weeks ago, she was with us at dinner last night. Some of you met Alicia Walker. One of the first things, when she understood what we're doing, she said, holy cow, you guys can help me plan how to distribute these buses so that I can meet the range requirements of a route, and I can also even out the wear, the usage of these batteries across the fleet. So she understood immediately what we could do. So we're in the process now of developing a piece of software. We did a very early implementation, and now we are the sponsors of a capstone design project in the Computer Science and Engineering department in the software engineering section of that capstone, who is engineering this software. And in the next month or so, we'll probably pay CODA a visit and demonstrate what we think we can do with this software and get feedback from them on how to improve the dashboard and the data analytics that we could do with that. Now, all of this is very much focused on battery electric buses, but there are a lot of functionalities that we've developed in these tools that could apply to any kind of fleet of vehicles, and it doesn't have to be electric. So one of the things we're looking at now, I'll give you another, for example. One of the maintenance issues that is important in buses is, they have to do maintenance and tire and brake wear, okay? Can you actually analyze from their data and understand what are conditions that will help you maybe spread out tire and brake wear around different types of routes, but also understand and predict when you should do that maintenance in a more structured way, as opposed to time-based maintenance, something that is more condition-based maintenance, understanding what the operation of the vehicle is. So these are some of the things we can do with this tool. A lot of this has been funded with a grant from the Federal Transit Administration. Then the FTA in December decided that they were not interested in doing things on battery electric buses, and we moved on to other things. But we have continued internally to support this work because we think that it's quite valuable. So if anyone wants to talk to us about fleet operations, we've got some tools that we can share with you. So with that, I think we've reached the end. That's certain. Oh, and I want to say that there are two people, here they are. There are two people who've made this happen. Ani was here earlier with his poster on this topic, and Dr. Luca Pulvirenti is not with us today, but he's still with us for the rest of 26, and they have been instrumental in making all of these things work, plus lots of other students from computer science, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we're done with today's meeting, and my effort to always be on time was almost successful. We went a few minutes over, but it was kind of fun. Plus, you got to see airplanes and satellites and other cool things that you normally don't see. What Zach did not know was that our VP for research had actually anticipated these questions on GPS because he talked about GPS. Okay, it's pretty. So it was a kind of a cool intro that John Horick gave Zach and Matt. So with that, one more time, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate your time and your visit. And for those of you who are interested in visiting CAR, we're over there, and Emmerling is there, Cook is there, McDick is there. Any of these people can take you, guide you back there and show you around. With that, have a fantastic weekend, and thanks for being with us.